Hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 223. Thanks so much for joining me. Today's guest, Greg Kosmicki, is here. He'll be with us in a few minutes, but before we begin, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this every week because we love poetry. And I know you do too because you're listening and watching right now. So please do click the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell, leave reviews on iTunes or Spotify or Amazon Music, anywhere you're listening to this later or at the right present moment. I guess it's always now while you're watching it right now. Please do something, click something to help spread poetry around the internet, because that is our mission here at Rattle, to promote the practice of poetry, and you can help promote it too. Now we like to start out with the prompt poem. This week's prompt poet is Arthur Russell, and you might remember Arthur was on as the main guest back in September, and you might remember from that he had the Brooklyn Poets group reading event every Monday night at the exact same time as the Rattlecast, so he was missing that one for this. And so he's there right now and can't be here to join us, but he is sharing that poem probably right now as we speak. It's from 8 to 9 in Brooklyn every Monday night. He's probably reading this poem there too, but he couldn't join us because of that event that he has, but we're going to share his poem anyway. And here it is right now. It's Gravity in Jerusalem. And I'll read his note at the bottom first. This is what he had to say about it. It's the topic that, most poems submitted for the last, month or two have been written about this. And here's another poem where we try to find different ways to cover, the topics that we cover through poetry. And this is Arthur Russell's take on it. I have been preoccupied since October 7th with the tragic events in Israel and Gaza. Preoccupied, sometimes embattled, and sometimes collapsing into a conflicted form of despair. I hear little bits of news and my emotions swing one way, and then other news, not necessarily conflicting news, that urges my heart and my rage and my despair in a new direction. Often, too, I feel disqualified by my distance from the reality, from having any feelings at all, and retreat to the emblems of my own spirit, my own morality, and my inheritance. And so, Arthur himself is Jewish, and that's part of the conflict. If you remember from his book, he was the chapbook winner from the Rattle Chapbook Prize from At the Car Wash. And this is his poem in response to those conflicted feelings, Gravity in Jerusalem. So let's give it a listen. I'll let Arthur read.
Gravity in Jerusalem. I wanted to grow up to be a rain cloud over an upstate reservoir during a drought. Then it was my ambition to become a slender woman, or a book jacket cut from a grocery bag, or a trumpet, or a garden rake, or a handkerchief embroidered with a strawberry heart. The evenings were much longer then. I wanted to be a satchel with latches that slid sideways to open, a cutting board bearing the wounds of nutrition on my back, the scratchy absolution of a dollar bill passing through the coin slot of a charity tin at the cashier of a candy store. Like the colors in comic books, when comic books were printed on foolscap. My irises would dilate for the dishwasher light in the darkened kitchen, and contract at the open refrigerator door. The brass drain in the kitchen sink, scrubbed with persistence to a low brass glimmer, was my art school. It whispered, "We are brass kin, and you are me in human form." I wanted to grow up to be the lavender soap in a lingerie drawer, or the handgun under the cable knit tennis sweater on the top shelf of the front hall closet. I envied the moldings around doorways, and wanted, more than friendship, to crawl inside a mezuzah, to read its scrolls in seclusion, and to emerge from my cell like morning in Manhattan, with muted light on the brick facade of an apartment house. I wanted to marry. I wanted to marry a book of matches once. To have children like misaligned wallpaper seams, and teach them how to blow their noses and spit up phlegm, and how to fit a square God in a round soul, and how to see all fathers as bags of donated clothing waiting by the door. There is more light in a glass doorknob than gravity in Jerusalem.
And that was Arthur Russell, once again with Gravity in Jerusalem. For more of Arthur's work, definitely pick up a copy of his chapbook at the car wash. But a wonderful poem, just with the great rich images there, and the symbolic meaning that reaches farther than what you can even articulate. I'm not sure what that wonderful last line means. There's more light in a glass doorknob than gravity in Jerusalem, but you can feel the meaning in it, and that's why it's just a wonderful poem. So thanks to Arthur for sharing that. He's been writing a lot of great poems lately. Once again, Arthur Russell with Gravity in Jerusalem, our Poet Respond poet this week. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest, Greg Kosmicki. So sit tight, and I'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Like I said, today's guest is Greg Kosmicki, one of the all-time, favorite poets of Rattle. We've always loved his poems. A typical, old-fashioned Rattle style. I like to think of it with down-to-earth voice and just wonderful, real storytelling about life, which is what Rattle was founded to provide. And, Alan always loves when I bring Greg's poems to the meetings. Greg Kosmicki is a poet and a retired social worker who lives now in Alpine, California. He founded Backwaters Press in 1997, and he now serves as the editor emeritus there. Greg's poetry has been published in numerous publications since 1975, all over the place, including the Paris Review and many others. He's received fellowships for the Nebraska Arts Council. His poems appear on Writer's Almanac. He's had 13 books and chapbooks of poems, and his most recent is right here, We Eat the Earth. And so that's what we're reading from today. His last collection, As Good Here as It Gets, from Logan House, was a finalist for the 2017 High Plains Book Award. And he and wife Debbie now live in Alpine, California. Here he is, Greg Kosmicki. Hi, Greg. Good to see you.
Hi, Tim. Good to see you.
Yeah, I think we might have met once very briefly at an event, but I think that's the only time. And just saying hi. And so it's great to talk to you because I've been reading your poems, which feel so much like you for so long. I think the first issue you were in was like number 29 or something. And there's been a good number of poems ever since. So it's great to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you, too.
Do you want to start out with a poem? Let's start with a Sunday Walk from early in the book.
Okay. And thanks for inviting me on, too.
Yeah, definitely my pleasure. Thanks for sending this book.
Sunday Walk. At the intersection, I watch left because I'm walking against the light. And when I get across, the guy in the second row of the left turn lane starts honking like crazy. God, he's really impatient. The light has barely changed. The woman in the car in front of him edges out her SUV into traffic, but the guy keeps honking. The guy in the right lane lays on the horn. I think he's honking at the other guy to show him what a prick he's being. The car behind him starts honking too. Then they're all joining in to shame the horn honking guy, too impatient to wait a second at the light. Cars clear across the intersection, join in, 4 or 5 cars honking, horns going everywhere. No car moves. Then the second guy to have started honking jumps out of his car, runs across the intersection to the left. Holy shit, there's going to be a fight. I look up across the intersection to see a kid in diapers wobble into the street. A woman in a slip with 2 other babies in her arms runs out into traffic from between 2 apartment buildings. The man picks up the toddler, hands her little boy to her. From somewhere, someone shouts at her, "Can't you take care of your fucking baby?"
And that was Sunday Walk by Greg Kosmicki from his newest book, We Eat the Earth, that just came out over the summer. And a beautiful cover on that book, too. I love the colorfulness of that. And that's such a sort of Greg Kosmicki type poem to start with, because I imagine so often the poems we've published of yours start off with you walking somewhere. They start with a walk to the kitchen
or
sometimes.
One of the two.
Yeah, exactly. Can you talk a little bit about that, about your writing process and how it's a part of your life?
Well, I think that I've been writing like that since I started. I kind of wander around and look for stuff that might turn into a poem and just start writing about it. And then I usually there's something in it that I don't realize is there. Because I guess if a poem's doing its work, that's what happens, that you find out something you didn't know before.
Yeah, for sure. And do you tend to write the poem the same day? Like, because I love that whenever I peel an orange poem too, it starts out with you going to the kitchen to peel an orange and the memories that brings up that we published. I think that was issue 33, maybe.
Yeah, thank you.
And do you write it like right then? Or is it something that you sort of lodge away as like, oh, this was a reverie that started when I was doing this and I'm going to write about it later? How does that work?
Well, actually, excuse me, with that one particular poem, Whenever I Peel an Orange, I wrote that out 2 different times, which is very uncharacteristic for me. Because I usually sit down and write from start to finish. And if the poem, I hope to get into that space, when you're writing, where your subconscious takes over and you can kind of shut your interfering, whichever side of the brain it is that's always controlling things, and censoring. I try to shut that off just subconsciously, but this one I just had those things that I wrote about in the poem, and I realized that they sort of went together. And then I realized I was looking through it one night, reading it, and tried putting it into lines. And so, which I've been accused of before too. That was one of the few times I ever did it. And then I had to tinker with it a little bit here and there to get them to fit together. But so, yes, the answer is yes or no, depending upon what I was talking about when you asked me.
Sounds good. Let's hear the next poem up. Is All Souls.
Okay, All Souls. This one's an acrostic poem. It's based upon a painting that's in the Joslin Art Museum in Omaha, Nebraska, after a painting by the same name as by Keith Jacobs Hagen. All Souls. We don't know anything about the blonde housewife wandering the kitchen, desperation in her throat. Plea to her uncle to get off, still fresh after 40 years. Stifled until her hair silvered gray, to match the corrugated tin sheds in the waning light. while the curtain tears and souls like hers escape to wander the universe alone, return to these scenes unbidden. The new wife, slicing fresh-picked pie apples, bloodies her finger and wonders why. The blighted sky funnels a soul the size of Nemaha County into this tiny place. The last blue covered in a certain uncertainty. Her son out front, burning branches of dead trees, thinks, these are like the arms and legs of the dead in hell. And father's drunk again before the 10 o'clock news. He'll hit her hard with the full weight of the failed crops, his failed life in his fist, right where it shows. He doesn't care. She'll say it's the door again. You know something bad happens here. The seed gone wrong. The tiny house frayed as a ball of lint. The starry outbuildings Grandpa and Dad built when times were good. It's more than anyone can bear, the burden, the shame, trees a blood-dark rosary of pain, distances more vast than the thought of God. The night the souls begin the dark journey under the weight of the crushing sky.
And that was All Souls by Greg
All
Kosmicki. Yeah, after a painting of the same name by Keith Jacobshagen. And from We Eat the Earth, his newest book. And right, there's a little bit of it, that poem gets into your work as a social worker, maybe, like some of the themes that come through that poem. Can you explain, how you came to be in that work? You worked for 25 years for the state of Nebraska, doing that kind of work. What was that, and how did it relate to poetry? Like, did you find poetry while doing that work, or did you find it before? How did the two intermingle, and how did you end up being a social worker?
Well, I started writing poems when I was in high school. So, I didn't ever write much about my work as a social worker because I always felt that it would be a violation of the people's rights who I served, so I just wrote very few poems about social work. I always looked at it as when I retire, then I can go back and write about that stuff, but then I've forgotten what it was. So it's a lot better for me to be right in the midst of what's going on to write about it. It's because things are much fresher. But as far as writing about the work I did, my first book, Nobody Lives Here Who Saw This Sky, was based upon when I was working as a package delivery person for one of the major companies in the United States. And it was a horrible job. And because it was physically taxing, and plus they managed by negativity, not by positivity. And I'm kind of negative anyway, so it didn't help. And so I did write a book of poems from that experience, but the rest of the stuff is very few poems have come out of my social work.
Yeah, but how did you end up in that field, though? Because I do think there's something related. Because poetry, a poem is a kind of empathy machine. And in social work, you work with your empathy. I did that work just for a couple of years as a counselor at a group home for mentally ill adults, kind of between deciding what to do with life and ending up with this job at Rattle. That was my job for about 3 years. And it takes a lot of the same sort of energy as poetry, I would say. Like there's the way that you're imagining what life is like for other people in order to talk to and counsel them, and that's really kind of what a poem is doing too. And so there seems to be like something related to that you fell into that career and being a poet, even though I haven't come across many poets who do that work. So how did you end up being a social worker?
Well, by accident, like everything else I've done in my life. When I graduated from Nebraska in '78, I was that far away from having my master's. I thought it turns out I actually had it, but I couldn't find work teaching, and so we moved to California and worked for a year out of my mother-in-law's liquor store out on Mission Beach in San Diego, and then came back to Nebraska and worked for a friend delivering bread, and then I got the job working for the package delivery company. And I mean, I've done 15 or 20 different jobs, and when I was 42 or something like that, there was an opening in the paper for the job at the state of Nebraska, and I applied for it. And the guy in personnel told me I had veteran status and I was over 40, so that's why I got the job.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'd always wanted to work in adult protective services for years, and finally, the last 12 years that I was working at the state of Nebraska, a job came open, and I was able to get into that. That was a really cool job, and I worked a lot of. I have a couple poems came out of working in adult protective services.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really interesting.
I actually lived and worked in a group home for 4 years too with my wife, with mentally handicapped adult males, and there's a poem or two came out of that. So
it's really interesting having having that many different experiences. What do you say? What would you say is the most sort of strangest one that you did, or the most memorable, the one that most informed you most as a human being? Would you say? Would it be the social work, or would it be something else?
Well, that's tough. You mean I mean, because you learn something every day if you're paying attention from every job that you do. I learned a lot about people working for the package delivery company, and about myself too. And I also learned things about people when I was working with homeless, mentally ill people when I was an adult protective services worker. So, and I learned about families taking advantage of their parents and grandparents too. So, I mean, everywhere I've worked, I've learned a lot of stuff. So. Mm-hmm. It's my life degree, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we were just talking, I think, last week with Bob Hickok about, not going to an MFA and having that be your only life experience, because you sort of have to, even before you do an MFA program, you have to understand a little bit about life, and you can't just have, poetry be the only thing, because then you end up sort of in the swirl of not being original, trying to go along with everybody else. And you definitely do. Your poetry is very original, and I think maybe that's part of doing all those different jobs throughout the years.
It could be, and I wanted to teach when I first started out, back in '78, but it's a good thing I didn't get a teaching job because I hated school anyway. So I don't know what kind of a teacher I would have been, but probably not that good of a teacher anyway. So.
Well, let's hear the next poem. I think this was the one from Rattle not too long ago. A hazardous brush with an abnormally extended feeling of well-being, which is the title.
I think this was from the humor issue, wasn't it, or something like that?
Well, maybe it was. I don't know. I lose track of which one was where, but I remember publishing it.
A hazardous brush with an abnormally extended feeling of well-being. Sometimes you can be so happy it's inexplicable, driving your car down the freeway, or sitting in your kitchen eating an apple. Or say you just completed a mundane task like putting 2 stacks of paper into order. It has nothing to do with that, probably. Probably it has nothing to do with anything. You can actually be happy for no real reason, just as you can breathe for no reason, or take a dump for no reason. I mean, other than the obvious reasons. Or maybe it's because you can say reason at least as many times as you'd like at the end of a line for no reason. If somebody tells you can't be happy, tell them to take a hike. There's no reason not to be, because if you want it to be, it can be. And you don't even have to have a reason to be happy. You can just be kind of like a spider might be happy, sitting up in a corner in her web, trying to think about whether or not she can understand the concept, or even if she cares or not. There's the web and the corner, and somewhere flying toward her, lunch. And somewhere a poem that ends with the word lunch.
Yeah, that's great. Love that ending too.
Thank
that
you.
was a hazardous brush with an abnormally extended feeling of well-being from We Eat the Earth. And as we've seen from the 3 poems we've read so far, your voice is very consistent. I mean, that's the pleasure of reading one of your books, is it feels like you're getting to know and talk to Greg Kosmicki directly. Like there's no, affectation or, highfalutin kind of words. The vocabulary is just, written like you talk. And how did you develop that style, and why did you want to write poems that way? Was it a process of developing your voice, which is something we wonder about as a poet all the time?
Well, back when I first started at school at the University in Nebraska back in '73, I had first I started out I wanted to be a lawyer, and then I when I was checking out my books at the campus bookstore, I looked at a book of torts and I said, "Oh my God, I am not doing that for the rest of my life." And so I decided I was going to do my second thing was become a novelist, and I realized after I wanted to be a novelist after I read The Grapes of Wrath, but that's a lot of work, writing novels. Writing poems, I can sit down and write something for 15 minutes or a half an hour, and I've got sort of a finished product. And so I've been jotting things like that since around that time, 74, 75, and just writing down whatever pops out. And I kind of tend to belong to that first word, best word school too. And so I didn't. That's one thing actually of my poems kind of all sound the same. Was I've been accused of that, and I send somebody a manuscript and they write back and say your poems all sound exactly the same. I said, well, sorry. So, but so I don't know that I don't think I ever developed the style, because that's just the way I sat down and wrote whatever pops out.
Mm-hmm. Were you drawn to poets writing in that style? I mean, there's some poets you loved early on that led you in that direction of the first word, best word?
I think probably at the university, that's where I first started actually reading contemporary American poems. And Greg Kuzma was my professor in beginning and advanced writing, and his big push was to get people to read a lot, so that you could see what you can do in poems. And I read, well, Charles Bukowski was a big influence. I loved The Days Run Away Like Wild Horses Over the Hills, and I think I maybe picked up from reading him, that you can write anything you feel like, and but. Elizabeth Bishop. I don't. I've read hundreds of poems by poets. It would be silly to start naming names.
Yeah, for sure. Jonathan Rangan in notes says, we should play a game. After Greg reads the title, let's guess what the poem is about. I bet no one will get it right. And that's it's true. You can really feel, though, that the meditative aspect of the poetry, that you don't know. I mean, it's true. No surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader, that kind of thing that we always talk about. It's just, you can see the way that you're, Bob last week was calling it like a performance to, sit down and create words and not know where you're going and end up at some destination. And you can see that in your poems too. Do you feel like it's a spiritual thing? Are you religious, and does it relate to that at all? Or is it sort of your secular prayer every day? Is that something that poetry does for you?
Well, I used to be, I wasn't religious, and then I was religious, and then I wasn't, and then I was, and let me see, I'm on the iteration of I'm not, and right now. And so I don't really know. I try not to think about it too much because it makes me self-conscious. And I found over the years that if I become self-conscious, like when I'm sitting down, I'm going to write a poem, that thought crosses my mind. Oh, I'm writing a poem, so I've got, it sounds like, so what I try to do is kind of let the pen move itself and not interrupt with thinking per se at all, and just whatever pops up. It's a horrible method, but anyway, it works
Well,
for
I
me.
think it's a great method. How what do you do? Do you find yourself like going into ruts where you do feel self conscious, and if so, how do you get out of that?
Well, I decided years ago if you feel blocked, that the best way to get out of a block is to write. So, and that I read somewhere one time that if you have a block and you're in a rut and you can't write, it's just because you think so highly of yourself that you think you can't do better than you did before, you know. And so it's kind of a mental game. I do know that if I don't write much, like, you know, as I've gotten older, I've been letting myself get a lot more distracted by everything that's out there, especially politics. And if I don't write as much, I'm not open to it as much. I'm not keeping my feelers out, and I'm not. It's kind of a painful process to be a poet because you always got to have your antennas up, and if you don't, you miss stuff that you could write about. So. Uh, I forget what you asked me.
Well, I asked how to be not self-conscious, but I love that. I've never heard that concept that if you're having trouble and you're blocked, it's because you're too proud of what you've written in the past. I think that's a great way to think of it.
Yeah, I could never do that well again, you know. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's true. Especially, you know, there's that you know, the syndrome of after you graduate, you know, grad school, sort of being depressed and stuff. And the same thing happens with a book. You know, you publish a book and you like it and you're like, oh, I could never do that again. And then it's hard to get back into a next one. That sophomore slump is a real issue for writers very often. Let's hear the next poem up, Second Story.
okay, this poem involves a real person, Anne Frank, and I was working at that time for Adult Protective Services, so that comes into this poem, and it actually is based on an actual walking out into the dining room one morning and seeing Anne Frank was on the TV there on a story, and this is called Second Story. The slogan "Arbeit macht frei," pardon my German, "work will make you free," was placed at the entrance to a number of Nazi concentration camps. And that was a quote from Wikipedia. Today I was getting ready for work. I just pressed my pants and shirt. I was walking out of the kitchen when I saw Anne Frank. The TV announcer said that had she lived, she would have been 84 today. Somewhere, unbelievably, some other human discovered the one piece of movie film, a home movie of a cousin's wedding. That was a moving picture of Anne Frank leaning out of a second-story window. I don't think she waved, though I would like to think she waved. The movie was taken in the shtetl where the Franks were hiding. The announcer said that Anne Frank would have been 12 years old in the pictures. She's looking out of the window to see her cousin's wedding. One of the heroes of World War II was running the camera, and Anne Frank was smiling. She was smiling like Lazarus across this tremendous distance. She would have been waving to us had she known, but all Anne Frank did in those few frames was to smile. I thought I saw her wave a small, shy wave, a hesitant wave, like your kid might wave to you when she saw you getting ready to go to work, when she didn't yet know what work meant, how it could enslave you, how it could set you free. I wish that Anne Frank was 84 years old and that she had plenty to eat and drink. I wish that she would watch Wheel of Fortune or on TV, or maybe even get addicted to Survivor. I wish that she had moved to Minneapolis or Omaha, not far from a shul she could walk to if she wanted to. I wish she was sitting in a low-income apartment somewhere in Omaha, her husband having died some 20 years ago, and thinking of a recipe for something like mandelbread or a nice soup, something she might offer an unexpected visitor from Adult Protective Services. I wish I could have protected her, that in my job at the state, I could have walked up the front sidewalk and been that visitor, that she would be standing there looking out her second-story window, and that she would wave to me.
Yeah, really touching poem, Second Story, about Anne Frank from We Eat the Earth. And another great example of just how your mind moves through poems. And again, we start with the walking, not knowing where it's going to go. And then we go to the Anne Frank and the reverie and thoughts about that. So it does feel like such a meditative process that you write with.
If I'm lucky, yeah, that's how it works.
Do you ever have trouble? Like, does it ever not work? Are there times where you don't, you sit down and it just doesn't work at all?
Yeah, all the time. One can feel when you're writing that if your conscious mind keeps interfering and I don't know, trying to direct what you say, and if I get stuck on those sometimes I always try to forge through, and keep going and try and find out where the poem is trying to lead me to. But sometimes my censorious self just won't shut up, and I can also tell, like, if I'm in the middle of a poem and I'm on a flight, I'm in the zone, and then suddenly my conscious mind breaks in and the poem goes, and then you can, and a lot of times I've had people point out to me poems when they're looking at them for a magazine or something. She said, this poem just kind of ends right here, and then you keep going another 12 lines. But So I think other people can tell it too.
Yeah, I think so. Jack Graves calls it the deep voice, but you're trying to find that voice of the deeper mind, and it comes out and speaks truth because it knows truth at a deeper level than we do consciously almost. And that's a great example. So Odd Writings mentions the double meanings behind Second Story is the title in the chat here. And there is that play on Second Story. How did that title come to be? Did you sort of just know that was the title right away? Or did you realize the metaphor in that being the second, sort of a secondhand story kind of, and that being part of the poem? It's another sort of layer of the metaphor.
I don't know. I try to write titles that don't give away the poem in the title. And I guess I was thinking that that she was in the second story window in the film, although I'm not really sure that she was. And then she was, maybe if she had lived, she could have moved to the United States. She'd only be 84 at that time, and could have been living here for years, and could be on the second story when I came, and then there's another story too. So it's kind of some different levels, but I don't know where that title came from.
Yeah. Well, those are the best ways things come out is through that subconscious. Just that's it, and then and they just come out, and then it all works, on that deeper level. So you were also the founder of Backwaters Press, which published a great number of really wonderful poets from Nebraska. I think it was all poets from the state of Nebraska, right? Can you? No,
we ran a national contest for Backwaters Press, and we published people from one of our winners lives in Dubai, and mostly it's been people from the U.S., but all over the country, New York, California, a couple Californians, everywhere.
So how did that come to be? How did you end up, if with doing social work and all these other jobs, how did founding a press become one of them?
Well, it's a long story, like everything with me. When I was a student of Greg Kuzma's, he used to run a little literary magazine called Pebble, and he also had a press down in one of those old hand letter press behemoth that weighed about 2 tons down in his basement. And so his wife Barb suggested that he call it the bestseller press, and because it was down in the cellar. And I was just struck by how gorgeous the books were, and how also I remember back in 1975 or so thinking, you know, I'll never see my name on a spine of a book. That'd be so cool if that ever happened. And so I always had this idea in mind that I wanted to start a press. And then a friend of mine who taught at Naropa for a number of years, Jack Collum, he taught at Poets in the Schools in Nebraska, had a manuscript that he'd shown me back in about 1985 or something. And I ran across it someplace and discovered and just read through it. And I said, man, this has got to be published. So I decided to start the press and publish Jack's book. It was Entering the City. That was the first book that Backwaters Press did back in 97 or 98.
So what was your experience, you know, starting it out, you know, finding funding? I imagine it was really difficult in a number of ways. What was your experience like running that? And you did it for, I don't know, 20 years or something like that, right?
Yeah, we did it for 20 years until I finally just decided to pass it along, and the University of Nebraska Press took it over as an imprint. And the first 5 or 6 years, I made the mistake that I guess a lot of small presses make, and I funded it myself. So if I didn't have enough money from sales to do another book, I would just pitch it in myself, and I ended up being thousands of dollars in the hole. Mm-hmm. And I ended up having to borrow some money off of my brother-in-law, or we would have gone bankrupt. And, and then when my dad died about 20 years ago, we used a pretty good sized inheritance to pay off the rest of what I owed for the press. And then it was shortly after that, around 2010 or so, I got incorporated as a nonprofit, and then we gradually started actually making money a little bit, you know. Mm-hmm.
And what is, like, I mean, how much does it cost? I know, you know, inflation changes everything, but how much does it cost to publish a book, and how big are the print runs for a press like Backwaters? I think a lot of people are probably interested in just the behind the scenes of how a small press operates. When you just want to start something, you find a manuscript you love and say, let's make books. And then there's a lot that goes into that. And it's a lot of stuff that happens that people don't understand how it works. So how much does a book cost? How many do you print? How many do you sell? What is it like on that level of trying to make, you know, ends meet for a small press?
Well, you know, as you were talking, this is I know this is too long of a topic to answer. It depends, for one thing, upon the form of publication that you decide to use. If you use print on demand, it can be a lot cheaper than if you do a press run of, say, 500 copies or something, because then you have to have money up front. And usually with print on demand, you can get by with doing a minimal fee for setup and all the fees that they charge, which can be a couple $100, and then you can print books which are more expensive per book cost, but you don't have to spend $7,000 to get a press run, you know. Mm-hmm. Or maintain a garage full of books that you can't get sold, you know. Yeah. So there's a lot of different answers to that question. I mean, there's been books written about it, so. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't want to lead anybody astray and have them get into this.
Yeah, and it's definitely
what you've done is amazing. You know.
Yeah, well, we started out like with that donation, you know, that you're talking about. You know, Alan Fox set it up, so we have a little endowment that helps fund everything. And yet I still have a garage with a wall that is just books, you know, and I give them out. That's why we give, you know, poets to the prison, you know, books to the prisons and things like that, just to get rid of them, to be honest, because we have so many, and you don't want to give them away. So we have, you know, we have events where I give away books. They're just always giving away books because there's so many, you know, you have to print so many, and it does fill up your garage. What was it like on the level of, you know, finding authors to publish and distributing and things like that? I mean, did you use a lot of the tools you learned from all those different jobs to go into the press? Because there's so many hats you have to wear for running a press, right?
Well, it was just a matter of kind of like finding our way along. I found a printer early on through Poets and Writers magazine, Morris Publishing in Kearney, Nebraska, and they mainly publish like cookbooks and that kind of stuff, the ring bound stuff. But they also publish books like this, that are what are called tablet books or perfect bound, and so they did. Though I used them for a couple, probably 5 or 6 books, and then started looking around at different options and found a couple other presses, and eventually stumbled upon print on demand, where I could get a book set up and ready to go for a couple $100, and then maybe pay somebody to design a cover for a few $100, and for I was working well below the rates, mm-hmm. And then get a book out there a lot more frequently, because we didn't have the initial huge outlay that you have if you do a press run, mm-hmm. So it was just a process of trial and error.
Yeah. Who'd you use for print on demand?
Well, I used Lightning Source for years. They're really good. They've had some issues with quality, but they've always fixed any problems that we had. Mm-hmm. There are. It's been a long time, probably 10 years or 8 years since I've been involved directly in publishing. So there's probably another 3,000 or 4,000. I mean, I'm joking, but there's probably a lot of print-on-demand companies out mm-hmm. there now that didn't exist when I was doing it.
Yeah, interesting, because Lightning Source is the Ingram one, so it's with Ingram Distribution, so you get the distribution, and they sort of have a monopoly on bookstores, so it's a nice combination.
That's one of the good things about it is for a press is that it's got automatic distribution, right? Mm-hmm. It's on Amazon, but then I really dislike Amazon because they screw over the publishers like mm-hmm. crazy, like they screw over everybody else. And originally I had gotten a book accepted by I think it was the Hero Project of the Century by I can't think of his name, African-American writer from Indiana, and they small press distribution in San Francisco agreed to start carrying Backwaters Press books, mm-hmm. and then shortly after that, I started using print on demand technology, and so I couldn't use SPD anymore because they had an exclusive contract thing. So although I accidentally did for about 5 years because I didn't realize I wasn't supposed to be. So
yeah, sometimes it's nice to be a small press flying under the radar a little bit. Yeah, people don't notice things. Yeah,
nobody pays attention.
One more question about the press. So what do you look for in a book? Like, how do you know that a book is something that you're going to want to publish versus something that you're not? Is there a certain sort of quality that you are looking for as a publisher and editor of a series of books? Because I know the books I've read have a lot of different styles, and it's not like it's one sort of type of poem. So what was it? Can you put your finger on something that you were looking for in a book for it to be successful and something you'd want to put out into the world?
Well, I always tried to follow Emily Dickinson's dictum that I know it's a poem when it takes the top of my head off, and or something. That's a paraphrase, but I look for poems that I think kind of like Rattle does. I try to find ones that have a deep emotional, psychological baggage that it's carrying along, and probably the surface of the poem is less important to me than the emotional content of the poem. Mm-hmm. But sloppily, that doesn't mean I like to read poems that are sloppy and mm-hmm. and dumb, like mine. So, but so I really appreciate what's become the buzzword for the last 20 years of craft and all that, mm-hmm. And I enjoy seeing a really well turned sonnet, and mm-hmm. so I like everything. And But what we look for mainly is emotional content when I was something that moves the reader.
Yeah, I could definitely relate because I don't know how else you would do it really, because it's, for me, reading a poem, you sort of feel something. The hair on your arm stands up a little bit. You just get your heart starts beating a little faster maybe. There's like an actual physiological reaction you have to a good poem, and that's really all it is. It's a kind of a simple thing as far as I'm concerned, and like, who cares what kind of poem did that if it sort of grabs your attention and then makes some kind of physical reaction in your body, which Emily Dickinson called that, having the top of your head taken off. But it could be, anything. And I think you could probably just hook yourself up to a lie detector and just, if it starts going off the chart a little bit, that's the book.
Let's take this book. Yeah.
Yeah, I always imagine like, an editor strapped to a chair, like in the, Clockwork Orange, and they're just like showing books, and all of a sudden, and the little thing goes exactly, and they're like, "That's the one." So interesting to hear that you do it that way too. Let's hear another poem. We've been talking a while, but I think that was a topic that people wanted to hear about, so it's good to cover.
Okay. This is a shorter poem. It's called "I Have Opened the Front Door to Let in the Birdsong." This was published in a little magazine called 84 Words, I think it was, and you could only have 84 words in the poem. So,
oh, interesting.
I've opened the front door to let in the bird songs. Weather unseasonably warm. Of course, I get car sounds too, but I'm determined to accept those voices like anything else in nature. Seems this morning, rusty, out-of-tune pickup trucks are an especially fine throat, meaning spring chores are not far behind. A generation of crocuses, or is it crocus, ready to burst into color. And the Toyotas with their angry reddish purple drivers. The freeway must be in bloom by now.
Yeah, it's a great little poem. I've opened the front door to let in the bird songs from We Eat the Earth by Greg Kosmicki. And I should say, too, if anybody has any questions for Greg, feel free to leave them in the chat windows on Facebook or YouTube. I'm keeping an eye on both. A lot of people enjoying the voice in these poems, and the way you don't know where it's going. And so if you have any questions, I'll pass them along. So leave them in the chat window. But can you talk a little bit about your once you write the poem, you mentioned before sort of sloppily doing it, maybe was your own word for it, I think. But there's a way that you kind of to feel sort of natural and casual, because there's a kind of a casual element to what you're doing. You want it to feel that way too. And so it's sort of an artistry to being casual, that sort of delight in disorder, kind of like, oh, this is nothing, is part of the act, I think, right? So how much, what do you think about sort of line breaks and how to shape and structure a poem? Do you write it with the line breaks and the shape that it has now? Is there a lot of revision after the fact? What is your writing process like on that level of detail?
Well, to tell you the truth, for the first, I don't know, 10 years or 15 years or so, or maybe longer, that I wrote, I never paid attention to line breaks at all. I just, when I was writing, I would get to the end of the line and I'd turn around and go back to the, Jack Collum called that Boustrophodon plow or something. Boustrophodon means when they're doing a field day to go back and forth. And so that's another thing that I sort of became self-conscious about when some of my friends who are really good poets started pointing out, wow, I really like these line breaks. And how did you decide to do that? And what made you decide to break it there? And these are so, they catch, you don't know where it's going to go in the next line, and it's, and so I started becoming self-conscious about that. But I do kind of have not some rules, but I try to tend to put a stronger word at the end of the line, rather than a the or an and or something. But I'm not averse to leaving a the or an and on the end of the line, maybe just to be contrary, I suppose, and because some people get enraged when they see that. And so I like to think that maybe I'm pissing some editor off out there. He's not going to publish my poem, but look at he left a thought at the end of this line and dumbass, so. So
yeah. Well, one of the criticisms we get, from some people publishing poems, especially because we have the Rattle Poetry Prize, and the whole goal of that is to get people who don't usually read a lot of poetry to get excited about submitting, and then they read a literary journal for a year. And the chapbooks too, and sort of get maybe sucked into our world where we love poetry, where they're just jotting things to the start. But you hear from those people, and a lot of times they say, this isn't poetry, it's just prose with line breaks. And so what do you say to that? Is it prose with line breaks? Does it matter? Is it not? Why is it not? What do you think about that?
Well, there was a quote from Mark Strand, and somebody was asking him why does he have line breaks like that, and he said something along the lines, I don't remember the exact quote, that the reason that poems have jagged lines is so you can tell it's a poem, But and of course that all goes out the window if you're writing prose poems, blocks of poems. I think that the reason that you can tell it's a poem is maybe it's up to the reader to decide is this a poem or not, because of the effect that it has on you,
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose a novel can have the same effect on you too, if after the 438th page you finally get to the point, where, like the end of For Whom the Bell Tolls, I think it was, where the guy is waiting out there in the woods with his rifle, and he's wounded really badly, and he knows the enemy's approaching, and the whole world narrowed down to the focus of that. That was kind of like a poem, a 350 page long poem, But,
Yeah.
So
is that your?
I don't know what you asked me. So,
Well, is that your definition of poem? Like the feeling, like something that evokes a feeling? What would you call it? That?
I think so. I don't. I think these arguments or questions have been going on for hundreds of years. What makes a poem? And I don't know if anybody really actually knows. There's always somebody who comes along and says, well, it has to be rhymed and metered, and that was a fashion at one time. And I my first little chapbook of poems, it was a really beautifully bound copy by Brady Press in Omaha, and I took it into work and I showed my boss there, and he looked through it. He says, he reads it, and these aren't poems. They don't rhyme,
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, give me that back, So anyway, I don't really know what makes a poem,
Mm-hmm.
or why anybody would want to do it.
Yeah.
But it feels good when you do. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely does. And people have remarked on your sort of happy demeanor. That there's so many poets, that they're so full of pathos, and poems are so often written about problems, and there's a happiness that sort of comes through in your poetry and in the interview here. Do you think poetry is one of the things that keeps you happy like that? Does it stave off the less happy aspects of it? Is that one of the things it does?
I guess it hasn't been doing a very good job the last 7 or 8 years, though. I've been fighting off getting depressed all the time because of the political news, So,
Mm-hmm.
and back when W was president, I kind of I just said to myself, I'm not going to allow this guy to move into the inside of my head and occupy space, and so I refused to write poems about anything having to do with political stuff, but maybe I should have written more poems and I would have stayed happier. I don't know.
Well, let's keep the poems coming, because I'm not on a good pace. I should have done more. So let's do the Morning Cloak next.
Okay. The Morning Cloak. On my way back from a walk, I saw a mourning cloak. The mourning cloak is a large-sized butterfly for these parts. It flew up in front of me, then circled around behind me. It landed on the grass a few yards back, so I walked over to see it. Along with me and my I'm sorry. I walked very carefully because I did not want to frighten it. I walked very carefully because it is one of the last creatures alive, along with me and my fellow humans. We who have killed off most of the others. The mourning cloak has dark gray-brown wingtips that darken toward the body into a deep blue, a blue so iridescent and perfect, it can break your heart in two, like a big sky or a lone tree in the middle of a field. Its posterior wing border is bright yellow from tip to tip. It has tiny blue dots all along the yellow band. I don't know the name for the blues, or if we have even named them in English. I say its name is not me. I say its name is something beautiful. I say its name is us. Its thorax is black velour, body like a little cigar, a perfecto. On the back of its head, it has two small yellow dots, I think are false eyes. To some other creature, it may look fearsome. I stood on the sidewalk, the traffic roaring by. I stood and looked at the morning cloak butterfly as it rested on a blade of grass beside a pinkish head of lawn clover. I stood until I became aware that someone of my species may think that I am insane. And though the morning cloak did not move, I moved along. Nothing to see here. I want to be pure as the morning cloak. I want to live the life left to me without regret.
Yeah, great last line there, Greg. That was the morning cloak. And I wonder too about, the way you write, given the way that you sort of don't know where you're going and you let the poem flow where it will. How do you know when the poem's over? How do you know when you've reached that last line? Is it do you hear it? Like, is there a sound to it that you know that's the end and then you're done?
Well, yeah, kind of. I think I know when it's done is when that stupid voice intrudes again on me and then it wrecks the poem, and so I quit there, But when I was studying Robert Frost with Greg Kuzma back at Nebraska, I remembered some of the lines I would get in my head, like the last couple lines of the woodpile, about the slow smokeless burning of decay. That's an incredibly beautiful rhythm, and or the last few lines of directive. These are your waters and your watering place. Drink and be whole again beyond confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Some just and I'd kind of get those rhythms in my head, and this was years ago. And I guess I would go around slotting words in and see if they worked in this rhythm, and sometimes that would make me start writing poems. But I just don't know when they're ended. That's been a problem of mine all these years. I send out all these horrible poems, and with one good one, and to magazines, and they read through the first 9 pages. This stuff is horrible, And then the one that was really good, they don't even get to because the other ones were. So I don't know.
That's funny.
I mean, that's a little bit of joking, but because you can tell if you write a poem that works. But sometimes they're so close to me that I don't know if it actually worked because it was a good poem, or if it works because I knew what was going on in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting question. There's a deep mystery to it too. Let's share the one. Let's do Why Should I Be Unhappy?
Why should I be unhappy? Why should I write unhappy poems? We're all going to die anyway. I might as well write something happy. Hell, I've got this house. I've got this computer. It's cold as hell outside, 6 degrees Fahrenheit, but I'm relatively warm. My ankles are a little cold, but I've got on a t-shirt and a sweater, a nice thick green sweater, and I pulled a light blue sweatshirt on over that. Lots of poor bastards out there tonight, all over the world, don't have that to be happy about. Lots of people don't have anything to be happy about. My kids are all grown up and healthy. Most people's kids in this world, on average, neither grow up nor are they healthy. I've got that. And they're not only healthy, but they're none of them mentally unbalanced. As a matter of fact, they're all very well balanced. They're what you might even call stable. That was before Trump. I don't know how my wife and I could have been so lucky. That's another thing. I've got a wife who who with minimal interference and with a lot of help, really, has allowed me the space I need after her few demands, like maybe wash the dishes once in a while or take out the trash, to be a poet and to start a money-losing company to print books by other poets that has sucked up all my free time, time that I could have spent with her, maybe in front of the TV, I'll grant you, but with her. She has given me all that time and more. She has given me her whole life so that we could have children and I could be a poet. So what do I have to be unhappy about? Even now, I'm drinking a glass of Paisano wine as I type this on my computer. Wine made by Carlo Rossi, good old Carlo Rossi. He's most likely been dead now these many years, or maybe he never actually even existed. Out of a gallon of wine we've got for only $9. Who can complain? Sure, we're all going to die. A good friend died just a couple days ago, and her son's first wife died of cirrhosis of the liver that same weekend. She never had a chance, but let's be happy. Everybody's going to die. Lakota even had a saying for it when they were going into battle. It's a good day to die. I think they meant, if you're living honorably, every day is a good day to die. We're all going to die. Let's be happy about it. Maybe my house has termites. I don't know. Maybe the foundation's giving in. I don't know. The floors creak when you walk on them where they didn't used to. And the pottery in the china cabinet rattles when heavy vehicles go by in the street. And that didn't used to happen. But the house hasn't caved in, and we're all alive here, me and Debbie and the dust mites. We're all going to die. Let's be happy.
Yeah, really fun poem. Why Should I Be Unhappy by Greg Kosmicki from We Eat the Earth. And let's see, Greg. So Kim Tedrow's here, and she wanted me to say, tell Greg that we in Nebraska miss him, because you did move to California from Nebraska after such a long time living there. Tom Hunley's there and says hi.
We're planning on moving back.
Planning on moving back, yeah. And why is that? Do you miss Nebraska or not like California?
Yeah, I wanted to run for the Miss Nebraska pageant. Well, it's actually just so freaking expensive here. Mm-hmm. And we live 25 miles from San Diego, and we like to go into San Diego almost every day of the week. And our car was sucking gas, and it was just, we have enough money to live on, but if we wanted to go do something fun, we, like take a trip to Vancouver or something for a couple of weeks, we couldn't really afford to do it anymore. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I can definitely relate to that, living in.
It's a lot less expensive in Omaha.
Yeah, so. Yeah, definitely. I can definitely relate. So let's see. So where'd it go? Cindy Guntherman wants to know: do your poems come quickly, and do you ever dream them? Which is an interesting question. I think I heard you say that they're usually, you said casually 20 or 30 minutes. So I think maybe that counts as quickly. But do you dream of them?
I have occasionally had a dream or two, but where I remember thinking as I'm dreaming, boy, that's really good. Then I wake up and I write it down, and it kind of sucks, So I've had some dream imagery come into poems before on occasion, but I find that they don't really work that well for me. I do know that some poets really. They keep a journal by their bed and jump up if they have a thought and they write it down. But, I'm trying to sleep. I don't be bothered by writing poems. So.
But people both on Facebook and YouTube have mentioned the landline phone behind you. They want to know if that's a working phone. Is that what you called me from a few minutes before the broadcast?
No, I called you. I called you from my cell phone. My wife had me get one because I had an episode where I fell over because I smoked too much dope, actually, and. Anyway, so she didn't want me to be passing out and not. But no, that's was on the wall in the basement in our house in Omaha, and I just brought it out here for a decoration.
Yeah, well, it does. It brings back a lot of nostalgia. I mean, obviously, I had the same one when I was a kid. I remember like stretching it across the room to the other room.
Yeah, that's got a really long cord. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I miss those.
Yeah.
But that kind of brings up, there's a way, is poetry itself kind of anachronistic? Is it something, do you think poetry is fading out, or do you think it still has the same vitality as it did just as a whole maybe 20 or 30 years ago?
Oh, I think it's got a lot more, when the spoken word, I mean, I don't, that's inflected by rap music. So it's a different kind of poetry than I write, but that's excited a lot of people to get out and write poems. And there's a million little magazines. I mean, they come up like mushrooms. And I from what I can see, there's a tremendous amount of interest in writing poetry. And I don't know if it's always just been there and people didn't have a place to express it, or if the MFA movement, back in the early 70s sparked it, or, because everybody's a poet now. So.
Yeah,
but
well, I mean,
I don't think it's dying off. I think it's like the death knell has been sounded way too early, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's more poets than ever, and you can see that there's just so many poets, and it makes things more difficult. Maybe fewer venues as some are shutting down, or more and more you see that. Journals and things that have been around for so long. But there's definitely a lot of poets, a lot of interest in it. And I think it's going to increase, more and more as we get more, because it's the antidote to our era, I would say, to meditate and think about life and create for yourself. And poetry is a way that we can all do that. But let's close out. We're out of time. Let's do one last poem. Let's do the lines written to be presented to a living audience, which is
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a kind of long one, so lines written to be presented to a living audience. I'm standing here before you reading this poem off a sheet of 50-pound recycled paper printed with words I wrote several months ago on a night in September 2009. It was a Saturday night, and I had worked on proofing some of my own poem on a computer and had answered some emails. My wife and I watched TV that afternoon to see the Nebraska Cornhuskers ridiculously lose a game of football they were winning to the Virginia Tech Hokies. Also that day in Omaha, there were two murders an hour apart from each other. But the news of the game and of even the weather took precedence over two human beings being shot in Omaha. Anyway, here I am reading this poem to you, and there you are listening to me, as if I were a person who knows something of life, who has a secret to understanding you don't have, or that you do have, but sometimes feel or think you don't know how to express. I know sometimes you want to scream at the person standing in front of you, reading words he or she has written some months ago and typed up onto a computer to read to you today. Shut up. You're making me crazy with all your BS, your assumed errors, your silly stories about your stupid life. If that's what you're thinking, as I'm sure some of you are, then allow me to extend to you my apologies, or maybe even my hand, as if we were all of us in this room shipwrecked, lost on a dark sea in the middle of our lives. All the old certainties now no longer worth anything. Let me give my hand to you and pull you up onto the shore of my certainty, my belief that these words here on this page are real, though I wrote them months and months ago, possibly even years, and that I know nothing more than you do about survival at sea, or in anything at all for that matter, not life in general, or in board meetings in particular, not in making love, nor in cooking up an egg the right way, nor in raising up children. All I know how to do is to keep writing these words down on the page that stay behind me like tracks I left coming out of the jungle, though I've never been in a jungle, coming out of the desert, though I have only been in a desert to gamble or urinate beside an ancient Joshua tree, though I know no more about mountains than what I've learned from them from a few hours of staying in them. a few brief walks. And for all the rest, what little I know of the world comes from images in books and words in books, like the desert or the ocean, or even the Great Plains where I grew up, or love, or hate, or Nepal, or situational ethics. It's all been only a little bit of actual pressing my face against a rock, or my fingers in the cracks between the bricks and mortar of a building, or on the flesh of another person's thigh. Oh, I know I've literally seen spiders weaving their webs, and I have seen a dog take a crap on a lawn more than once. And I have seen 2 squirrels going at it in my driveway, and even a few animals other places. And I've looked up at the night sky to see more stars than I could comprehend, knowing that our culture's number system in relationship to the universe is like the tribesmen they found in ancient villages whose number systems were 1 and everything greater than 1. But maybe those Stone Age guys are onto it. Maybe they know what I do not, and you may not. You see, I can't even tell that about you, that we only learn through our bodies. And I reach out my hand here today to you where you float on that little piece of flotsam or jetsam you call your life. You can actually touch it. My brothers, my sisters, my fathers and mothers, who are all out there at the tangled ends of these lines that looked like barbed wire the night I wrote them in my crabbed hand, that looked like the lines of communication we must keep open, that looked like the earth opening up and drawing us back in, that go out from me and into you, into that bridgeable space between us, the synapse of the poem.
Yeah, the great poem I thought to end on, Greg. The
Thanks,
lines
Tim.
written to be presented to a living audience, which hopefully we are out here from Greg's newest book, We Eat the Earth. Thanks for being a guest, Greg. It's a pleasure talking to you. You know, the
Thanks,
humor
Robert.
and the joy comes through how much you love writing and sharing these poems. It's great talking to you about it.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, it was Greg Kosmicki with We Eat the Earth. If you want to spend more time with Greg, just pick up a copy of his book, because that's what it feels like reading through. You can find more. You can find the book itself at WSC Press. That's WSCPress.com is the publisher of this book, We Eat the Earth. So do check that out if you would. Now we're going to take a bit of a break and go to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was to write a poem that begins with an idiomatic expression that you take literally or incorrectly and see where it goes. So if you have poems like that, email it first to promptlines@rattle.com, all one word, promptlines@rattle.com. And then I can show the poem on the screen as we go if you haven't done that yet. And then find the Zoom link, which I'm going to paste into the chat windows on Facebook and YouTube. Join the Zoom, share a poem, but only if you want to share a poem. And only if you have a prompt poem, because it's the prompt lines now. So join us there, share a poem. But if you just want to enjoy, sit back and enjoy the poetry, do that. And stay right where you are with the YouTube or Facebook or Twitter streams. And I'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Now, before we go to the prompt lines, I wanted to share a book with everybody. There's a new book out by Edward Nudelman, who, or Nudelman, I should say. And Ed is a poet we published back in the Science Poets issue. I asked him to be on the Rattlecast because I thought it'd be so cool to have a scientist poet on to talk about that. He's a biochemical oncologist. And we've been friends on Facebook for a long time, but he couldn't do the Zoom for various reasons. And so I just wanted to share a couple poems from this book. The book is Nonlinear Equations for Growing Better Olives. And a beautiful book from Kelsey Books that we'll put on the screen here. There's Ed He says, this is a blurb from Greg Bilgier, but he quotes it. He says, I liked my career in biochemical oncology, but the nomenclature bored me, lacking the spice of common names and not conveying the architecture of discovery and wonder. And so the idea of a scientist moving through the world, looking at poems is really fascinating. You get a lot of looks at life and biology as he moves through the world with this sort of scientific eye. I thought I'd share 2 poems from the book just because he couldn't be a guest and I wanted him to be. So here's scientific method. Owls in the orchestra, hooting disruption. An old man napping on a park bench, sitting up at dusk, puzzled by some forgotten urgency. Through the dark network tunnels, the forest mole, salving for each blind X his wise, tender shoots await a raccoon's hungry chewing. 60 million years ago, an asteroid collides with a planet. No more Stegosaurus. You rise before the sun and hit the road, but the traffic still thickens and rivers run dry. A mountain punctures a thundercloud without an injury we can measure. A lone hummingbird on a branch nearby flashes iridescent in the gloaming, toggles from one shade of red to another, like the blush of heartbeat in all things, loops and layers and dots, a scrim of beauty that for a moment the old man understands. So that's the opening poem from the book, and I'll read the title poem too. This is the title poem, Nonlinear Equations for Growing Better Olives. Perhaps you've been given the grace of happy oblivion, but I think of the stars' speed every day. Reclining in my lawn chair pointed upward, I see only clear blue. Yet I know the stars hurtle through space at about 500,000 miles per hour, with little deflecting them but the heartthrob of gravity. I sometimes wonder if it's me thinking too fast, and maybe not even at all, a mere mortal fluxed by galaxy and planet, thwarted by a tiny virus, or rippled through by the most benign of forces. It makes me wonder as I dab a brow, wiping clean the clash of unearned serendipity, my needled imagination projecting far more nervous doubt than the appreciation of paradox. In 40 years of biomedical research, only one raptured dreamer ever reminded me of the simple path, with his bench-side epithets invoking Occam's razor, cautioning with a waving finger and a bent smile, "Don't forget that razor," while I shot the moon with complicated theories. And now in Seattle, my little olive trees have only a smattering of mature, ripe olives, while thousands of shriveled, unfertilized specks dot the branches. This is an unsolved problem I've attacked for years, and though I'd love olives of decent size to brine and adorn in decorated jars with custom labels, blowing through a straw for days trying to move pollen particles from anther to pistil takes a toll. After explaining coronavirus and months of defending self-evident data, taking heat for revealing obvious conspiracy, and rubbernecking graphs and charts, I'm left enervated, perplexed, full of survivor's guilt. Where some see a million scattered dots, I see cytokine storms and shining green stars birthing and dying. So that is the title poem from Nonlinear Equations for Growing Better Olives by Ed Nudelman. And you can find that from Kelsey Books. So do check that out. Just wanted to share that. We have this slot that sometimes we have guests return for. Sometimes some poets like this who can't be a guest but have a book I'd like to share. So that was Ed Nudelman. Now let's go to the actual prompt lines. And our prompt poems editor is here from the new Texas office, which I put together most of those bookcases in the back. Hey, Katie, how you doing?
I get going for a minimalist look,
Yeah, that's the new look. And you can see those wonderful IKEA bookshelves that at some point soon will be filled with books.
But you'd be remiss if you didn't point out that you have the same IKEA bookshelf behind you.
Yes, I do. So we got the same, although there's two, and there's a cabinet in the middle. So we got lots of bookshelves back there in the Texas office. But good to see you, Katie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I really like the interview. I feel like Greg is so cool. I aspire to be like half as cool as he is.
Yeah, he is definitely a chill kind of customer. It's fun talking to him and not taking anything too seriously, which is I guess what he does. Just enjoying the process of making poems happen.
Yeah, and I've got to copy that landline on the wall as art trick. I think that's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, I was thinking about how when he said that it's so much of the typewriter that is completely unused that I have in the background here, as if for a little while I did Instagram photos typing away. And there's one ad that we do. That's the only use it's ever had, actually, though. It's like a few lines of poetry. but it is pretty back there. And a phone would do the same trick, I think. So.
Yeah, I think so. It's like a Dada art object at this point, I think.
Yeah, it is. I remember when my kids, there was a phone booth. And my kids had no idea what it was. And so, I mean, there was a phone in there too. They were like, what is this? I'm like, you used to take a quarter out and plop it in and, but anyway. So the prompt for this week was to write about an idiom and take it literally or in some different direction. What did you do for your poem?
Well, I had to pick one that was poker related because they're about 1 billion poker-related idioms.
Mm-hmm.
So I went with under the gun, which if you play poker means like you're the first to act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and you better act fast.
I have to admit, I didn't know what that meant.
No.
I know they say it when you watch poker on ESPN or whatever, but I don't know. I don't know what most of the poker terms mean. Although I think poker is fun, but
that's a good thing.
Okay, so let's hear this one.
Okay, under the gun. At first, I thought it was a steel chandelier above my head, back when your words were only words loaded with blanks, when I thought anything empty was simply a kind of vase. How many wildflowers did I pick to fill your barrels? Every time I looked up, your muzzles eyed my pupils. I blinked and pistols bloomed to rifles. I triggered you by rooting where you couldn't grow, which is everywhere I have ever known. And when you finally fired every gun, I thank you for your rain that shot me towards the sun.
Yeah, great line, little rhyme at the end there, under the gun. Thanks for sharing that, Katie.
Thank you. And you wrote a bunch of poems this week, right? You told me this.
I did, yeah, true.
You beat me. I
Yeah,
only wrote
once.
like 2 poems this week. So.
Yeah, I had, on the plane back from Texas, I had a whole row to myself. And so there was like no one, and I was like had the window at first, and I just jumped in the middle, stretched out, had my little laptop, and I think I wrote like 10 of these. And as a setup, or it's not much it's kind of easy to do, but these are all prose poems, and it's kind of almost like a chapbook. But I won't read them all, but I'll read a few of these. So this is the idioms is what I'm calling it. This is from the idioms. So here's one. Every cloud has a silver lining. And all I did, of course, I just wrote down, while I was waiting to board, I copied and pasted a list of idioms. And I wanted to see how many I could do something for. So, and I got to 7 before the turbulence started. And then I finished a couple later at home. But anyway, every cloud has a silver lining. And so the drones dart like dragonflies, skimming the dust from their bellies with tiny parachutes. Day and night they zip overhead, following the cold fronts, dropping their harvest straight down the long throats of the smelting trucks. And so what if it always rains, the clouds spilling their guts on the people? Haven't we given them silver boots and umbrellas? Can't we finally afford to make more clouds with assault? Every cloud has a silver lining. Here's barking up the wrong tree. At first, I thought the dog was just afraid of stairs, the way he'd follow me to their feet and then poke his nose at the risers. I bought a dog, not a goddamn mime, I'd yell from the landing, but he'd only cock his head and stare at the stairs in confusion. Then he'd start to whimper like he was questioning his sanity, like my voice was the voice of God or an alien's calling from a higher dimension. Finally, I laid down beside him and saw that that's what it was, his heightless body thinner than a puddle of paint. I petted the top of his head, which was all of him. His fur wasn't soft. It was impossibly smooth, my hand moving without friction like a floating magnet. That was only one of the perks of a 2D dog. No hair to shed, no noise from his nails click-clacking in the hall. Outside, he'd catch the squirrels by their shadows, climbing in a sprint up the shadows of trees.
Ooh.
So that is...
I like that. With the squirrels, catching the squirrels by their shadows. That is a cool line.
Well, thank you. And then here is another one. I don't know. It's a 2-page max. What do you think? Should I read more?
Of course you should read more, Timothy Green.
Okay, fine. This is the shortest one, I think. It's Tempest in a Teacup. There's a tempest in my teacup, she said, and there it was, the size of a pushpin, swirling, flaked with streaks of goldish lightning. She reached down to pluck it out. No, don't, her seatmate yelled, but it was too late. They were already married in the drain. here is he couldn't wrap his head around it. The house was too big. All those bedrooms and baths, the vaulted ceilings, living room, drawing room, family room, dining room, all their air ducts and upgrades, all the chrome appliances and crown moldings, the pictures and frames, the paintings with the artist names in oil under glass. He found what must be the center of the house as mass and spun, but for the blur of it only wrapped around him. He ran a lap on the lot line. He pressed his face against the brick facade, spreading the flesh of his forehead over a corner with a finger. Back in the heart of the house, he found his favorite chair and sat there, wondering what it was that was missing. I'll do one more, and they keep going on, but I don't want to...
Keep going. Those are great.
I'll do one more.
Okay.
This is at the drop of a hat. The day we learned about the difference between classical and operant conditioning, I taught my little brother to dance at the drop of a hat. It was a simple task. Drop the hat in front of him, then reward the right movements incrementally with candy. Like Skinner teaching rats to climb a ladder one little paw at a time, he first learned a jig, then the jitterbug. The next day, I brought him in for show and tell, like the rest of my classmates. We held up our hats at the front of the room and dropped them together at the sound of the teacher's bell. She was pleased. We would finally have a chorus for the play. So that is, and then they do keep going on, but that'll be enough. But those were my, the idioms. And I might just keep going. It's kind of, I was doing a haiku a day, but those are just as easy as a haiku. So maybe I'll keep going for a while because I was kind of running out of haiku.
Well, I cursed the turbulence on the plane that kept us from getting 6 more. But other than that, those are amazing.
Well, thank you. And you'll be back with Katie to hear what the prompt poem is going to be next week. But thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
And now let's see what everybody else has for their idiomatic poems. Carla Schwartz is first in line. Hey, Carla. Oh, I think you're on. Your microphone's not working. You're not muted, but yeah.
Okay. Got it.
There you go.
Sorry.
No problem. Good to see you.
Hate the button. It was a great night so far. And, your poems, your series of poems, Tim, are ripe for being haibun.
That's true.
You just have to find your haiku.
I know, but I need to take a break of haiku. You know what happened with haiku is that I started using, I couldn't get out of this rut of always using, what's it called? Participles, the ing verbs, and I felt like I was like stuck. There's only a few syntactical structures that I was using, and I felt like I was in a rut. And so I wanted to stop with the haiku and try something else. So maybe this will be it for a while.
Wow. Well, it was great output. So what I have tonight is a haibun.
Well, there you go. Perfect.
I hope. And it's called Between a Rock and a Hard Place, a Wrenched Knee.
Ah, that's great. Let's hear it.
The day begins with snow on the forecast, cast to the green branches of low hemlock and pine. The white against the green defines the December scene. The trail starts off wide as a road, but rooted and leaf-strewn. The snow hasn't held to the ground, but the sun won't emerge from the clouds. The walk divides in 3, the fire tower, the loo, the mountaintop. We are 3 as well, and I have no difficulties to keep up. At tower's height, we view fog, clouds in every direction. It's only because we miss a turn we find the soul pit toilet fully supplied. We had started early, but the morning was eating itself. At once we arrive at Round Pond, speckled with islands of glacial erratics, huge boulders left by glaciers to populate the pond. Continuing from the pond, the temperature rises, still cold, but warm enough for the melted snow to drizzle down on us and and on the trail with rivulets of streams that follow both our rock scramble climb and our descent. After the stony mountain peaks, our trail is a bouldered ridge. Our walk down brings us to stone slopes, and when I slip, my right boot holds grip while my left slides me down. Between The rock and the hard place is my ass. The pain of bending my artificial knee to a point where until now it has refused to bend induces a yowl that must be heard for miles. Between a rock and a hard place, limits of elasticity.
Ah, that's great. Love that use of the high bend and that the great use of the form. And the last line, you forget almost what the title was until you get to that. It's really great use of the form. I liked it. Thanks for sharing that, Carla.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was Carla Schwartz with Between a Rock and a Hard Place, a Wrenched Knee. And, you know, Katie, you can keep your mic open. It's quiet there if you want to just chime in with comments. Like, we kind of miss you when you're, like, in a different state.
Well, I would like to comment that Nivedita needs to read next.
That's a good point. Thanks for, see, that's already an excellent contribution.
Yay!
Yeah, here, let's go to Nivi next. Hey, Nivi.
Hi, Katie. Hi, everybody. Thanks, and sorry for cutting in line.
Yeah, it's great to see you. It's great to have you, and I always want to get you before you have to go back to work. So what do you have to share this week?
I have a prompt poem. I found it very difficult to choose an idiom, but I sort of invented this random idiom generator, and the first one it popped up is the one I chose, which was come rain or shine. I took it in sort of a fun way. It's not funny, but it's more lighthearted. It's more light verse, but how we should probably live our life. Not preachy by any means, but that's just how it turned out for me.
Yeah, well, that's great. Looking forward to it. Go ahead.
Okay. Come rain or shine. In rain or shine, we'll find a quirky rhyme and have some fun, come storms or sunshine. With umbrellas we twirl and rain boots we dance, giving those sun hats a break from their psychedelic trance. Come rain or shine, we'll boldly advance through a life full of quirky, unpredictable romance. Although the weather may jest, you'd best be assured we'll do our best. Through rain and shine, we'll laugh and play, as joy will be our only focus, no matter the color of the sky today.
Beautiful. Excellent point. I love the way that this prompt is leading to more happy, playful poems. It's so fun to hear. And a good pairing with Greg Kosmicki is the guest, too, like a fine wine, the prompt lines are this week.
Yes, a fine line. I heard bits of it on the way to work on the train. And I especially loved Carla's Sciku. Until the end, you were right, we didn't know. And Katie's, the ending was brilliant. And yours, I loved the drop of a hat. The best.
Thanks so much. Well, thanks, Nivi. Always a pleasure having you. Great seeing you.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day at work. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good evening, all of you.
Yeah, there was Nivi Karthik with Come Rain or Shine. Next up, we have Dick Westheimer. Hey, Dick.
Tim.
How you doing?
Good.
You were in a different location.
I am in a different location. It's cold here, and this room has a little more heat than my little tiny office.
Yeah, and the camera is like some amazingly powerful camera. That's like I'm gonna have to ask you off screen what you bought so I can buy one.
Okay, I'll give you a primer in my primal camera, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I love the interview. I think the piece that I love the most about it was just the voice, the speaking voice. Obviously the poetic voice matches it, but maybe it was the consistency of the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And it's been like that, every time I've read, I think, because I get so many books in the mail and I had no way to use them for years either, except for, we have some reviews for a while, but so I've read a bunch of his books and they all have that same quality. It feels like you're getting to sit down and, meet a friend, which is just a nice feeling to come across. And the humor comes through too. It's a fun way to engage the world too.
Well, then he kind of rolls in without you suspecting it, these metaphors that are just, like they're very much part of the speaking of the poem, but he does it without any sort of pretense. It's really nice.
Yeah, it really is. It's that the feigning of casualness, but it's not that casual to write poems like that. Yeah.
Is that like the George Burns joke about the way you fake it's sincerity is the most important thing, and once you can fake that, you've got it made.
That's great. I haven't heard that before. I love that. Okay, well, what do you got? The I made smaller by
actually. I thought I had sent it as a Poets Respond poem, but I didn't. So here you're getting it for the first time. It's called My World Made Smaller by Chips and Crisps. And it was just this quirky little article in The Guardian about the people who are responsible for the different flavors of Lay's all around the world. And they're like hundreds of flavors of Lay's, including poutine in Canada. So My World Made Smaller by Chips and Crisps and Chips. Let the chips fall where they may. Let the Brits call them crisps. Let the crumbled bits find their way into the seams of my new car's heated seats. I had sworn on a holy bag of flaming Lays I'd not snack there, but every time I drive, I crave that crunch, digging my ungloved hand into the sack, grabbing a fistful of red dye #2 corn and or canola oil maltodextrin powder all over my mitts. It's flavor I crave, the chili pepper punch, the barbecue heat. It's my drug, and I can pack my habit in my carry-on bag and take it with me to exotic places, cram my face with masala mayhem in the UK, soil myself with Swiss grilled cheese in Belize, or crispy squid in a Bangkok bistro. Or I can stay right here, park my new ride in the driveway and surround myself with foreign flavors, staining my greasy orange thumbs and smear my hands on the thighs of my pants. Let me celebrate the great festival of colors of Holi alone in my car, gorging on nothing important.
It's such a fun poem, Dick. Thanks for sharing that. My World Made Smaller by Crisps and Chips. That's excellent.
Yeah, it's a little sad seeing me in my driveway gorging on flaming Lays, but don't tell anybody about it.
I won't. The secret is safe with us. Thanks, Dick.
Bye-bye.
Yep, take care. So Dick Westheimer with My World Made Smaller by Crisps and Chips. Guy Chambers is next up. Hey, Guy.
Oh, Tim.
Hey, yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be back again. I've been busy here the last little couple of months here because I'm doing some recordings of my poems for a couple of different radio stations up here.
Oh, that's fun.
So they'll be coming out soon. But for this prompt one, I call this belonging, and too. So it's called cold feet, untied shoes to the window. Alter ego to a broken journey. Alone at home, down to the bone. Blue jeans, on, with holes in it. White is out of the question. Shaving her legs, not to give it away. Cold feet takes over simple possibilities. Hide behind, sleepy eye, with cloudy cry. I whisper mine, that's colorblind. Nevertheless, still lingering, belonging, but don't want to be closing eyes to a name not to answer to. I suppose it's about everybody wants to be belonging, but sometimes you want to take that chance, but you say, what kind of reputation am I going to have or something like that? So it's a little tough to get going, but yes.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Guy.
Thank you. Bye.
Yep, take care, and best luck with those recording poems. That's neat, too.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yep, bye. So Guy Chambers with Belonging. Stephen Allen is next in line. Hey, Stephen.
Hi there.
Yeah, great to see you.
Good to be here.
So how do you tackle the prompt?
I tackled it by writing a sonnet, of course. Sonnet for a damp day. It's raining cats and dogs, and also men, and even horses. Why not add some lions, giraffes, and zebras, and the odd white chicken blazing the red wheelbarrow on the way down? Let's not forget the smaller precipitation. Mice fleeing from the sodden cats in droves, chipmunks and squirrels increasing the population of rodents in the world, shrews and moles. And smaller still, the insect world drops wetly, flies and gnats and lice, some clinging to hosts, some falling free, and eternal fleas, down to tardigrades and merest ghosts of zooplankton. The little beasts will get into the cracks. You might as well get wet.
Ah, that's great. Love that. Yeah, thanks so
Thank
much
you.
for sharing that. Always love a sonnet, and always love a sonneteer. Thanks for being here, Stephen.
You're welcome.
Yep, it was Sonnet for Damp Day by Stephen Allen. Next we have Stephen Croft, going from one Stephen to another, but a PH to a V. Hey, Stephen.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah, good to see you. What you got for us this week?
It's about time you called on me tonight. And my idiomatic expression is, it's about time.
That's perfect. Okay.
So here goes. It's about time. Time will never come full circle like a broken wall clock. Time will never catch me like the bad guys in Road Warrior. Time is hardly the past and the present like your great aunt's fruitcake. Time is too handsy. Just try turning back its hands. Time was precious like a string of pearls fenced on the black market. Time was a dish served cold in revenge of the alarm clock. Time can have a stitch that saves 9 like 9 can't save its confabulous self. Time will tell or maybe tattletale on space as their relationship continuums. Time to quit while I'm behind like the poetry police with handcuffs.
Oh, that's great. Love that ending too. So many things you do about time. Excellent use of the prompt to spin off that. Thanks for sharing that, Stephen.
Thank you.
It was Stephen Croft with It's About Time. Brian O'Sullivan is next. I think I might have clicked on the wrong one. Yeah, Brian O'Sullivan. Hey, Brian.
Hi.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you. It's a great show.
Thanks.
Really
Yeah.
fun prompt.
It definitely was. I enjoyed it. I had fun with it. And where'd you go?
I'm probably a little bit more bitter than a lot of these. Still playful, but not exactly cheerful.
Sounds good. Let's hear it.
Okay. It's an Irish malediction after an Irish blessing. May the road rise up to meet you, and may it beat you with a blackthorn stick. May the wind be always at your back, and may it blow you far from here. May the sun shine warm upon your face, your pale Irish defenseless face. May the rains wash away your fields, and until we meet in hell, may the Lord hold you in the palm of his hand and clap.
That's great. And I would say I think that's as funny as anything else. I think it's one of those like lovable grumpy characters, and it's great personality there. Thanks for sharing that, Brian.
Thanks.
I have to say, because I read that before, because you posted it kindly in the Facebook group, and I love the poor Irish defenseless face. As somebody who has to wear sunscreen in the winter when it's cloudy, like, I love that line.
An experience of that, yeah.
That's true. I do not have that problem, which is nice. All right, yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Brian. Brian O'Sullivan with an Irish malediction. And Zachary Honeycutt is here, already unmuted because I accidentally clicked it before. Hey, Zach.
Hey, Tim. How's it going?
It's great. Yeah, good to see you again.
I have to, hold on one second. My Zoom is being glitchy.
Well, it works great on our end, so you can just, read the poem and it'll be all good.
I'm looking to get out of it. Is there any way, wait, hold on one second.
Okay.
Full screen. Oh, I got it. Okay, I'm good. I'm all good, Tim.
Okay.
I am as cool as a cucumber now, Tim.
That's great. Is that your prompt? Are we all going to segue using the idioms?
So I have a rather short 5-page poem tonight, Tim.
Okay. Well, you can read 2 of those pages, Zach.
You'll let me read the whole thing.
No, I won't. It's a 2-page max.
All right, we'll see. It's called The Demolition Man.
Okay, I'm gonna have to. If you keep reading past the 2-page, I'm gonna have to cut you out, kick you out of the Zoom. So it's a limit. It's an actual limit.
The Demolition Man, okay. Free verse poem.
Okay.
1. They look so good from the road, but leopards cannot change their spots, not within the concrete jungle. The city, within which lies a community of cookie-cutter houses that we come by, we who often drive through the development off Goliath Street. We see the red, the blue, the off-white houses. We see them always for what they are. They all look the same, though some of them have multicolored ribbons in their hair. And the paint that never takes a holiday does not cross the boundary lines of the white trim. The houses look beautiful from the road, but if you're a man of wisdom, if you start to pay attention to them as you go down Goliath Street through the community, when you pass them more closely, you'll notice things. You'll see things you never saw before. You listened, but chose not to see. A man who we all called David, who wore a hard hat, who caught their soft gazes, who was hot as hell, but appeared to the painted homes with colorful ribbons, colder, though he was not, than ice, walked through the town one day. They noticed him. Immediately, they, one by one, all called to him from the side, gesturing as slyly as foxes to him, to come over to them. "Come lie down with us," the giants said. "Can you not see how colorfully our walls are painted? Note the ribbons in our colorful hair. Come and lay down inside of us. Don't be stubborn like an ox, like a mule that won't come lest by bit and bridle. Cross the threshold and lie down with us, taste us, then lick the residue of the smudges from our painted lips off yours. Don't you see how beautiful we are?" The man named David passed them by, one by one as they called to him. Then, when he reached the end of Goliath Street, there was hysteria, rage, panic. And we watched David as cool as a watched cucumber that came back up out of the water, tread lightly, not take their comments hard. But, do you want me to stop there, Tim?
Yeah, let's stop there, Zach. And you have two options. You can either have a cliffhanger and reread the rest next week, or you can post the rest in the Prompt Poems group on Facebook, which would be great too. So I know you're a member there. So either way.
Maybe I'll post it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Part 2 is the demolition of Goliath Street, as hence the title, Demolition Man.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah.
Well, very interesting. Definitely love hearing it. I love your voice, how different it is from most others. It's great. Thanks for sharing that, Zach.
Yeah, thank you, Tim.
Yep.
I'll see you guys next week.
Okay, cool. Take care. There's Zachary Honeycutt with the first half of The Demolition Man. Check out the rest at our Prompt Poems group on Facebook, probably. That would be facebook.com/ I don't know what. No. Go to facebook.com/rattle poetry. Then find the group there. Because I think the groups just go by numbers. It's like 197845639 or something like that. Because I'm Rain
You
Man.
sound like a Girl Scout troop.
Maybe it is. So next we have Mike Bales. Hey, Mike.
Hello. What a fun prompt. I know, to me, idioms are kind of like cliches, and I figure someone said for poetry, if you use the cliche, put it in context, and I guess you get a new meaning. So your poems surprise me with what I write, so I hope I surprise other people with what I write. I emailed it to you. It's actually a fraternity poem called The Storied House.
Yeah, I have it right here. Yeah, let's hear it.
The idioms are in italics. I don't know if that shows on the screen.
It does, yeah.
The Storied House. "I'm not your mother," the house mother said when I asked her to mend the hole in my blue jeans. In a weekly house meeting, seniors told us freshmen, "Your mother's not here to pick up after you. when assigning chores to be done every night. Our house parents lived in their apartment downstairs, but each night they came upstairs, sat at the head table, and joined us for dinner. When they were gone, we said to each other, "No one's your maid," as we made this structure of brick and mortar our world, our home. When we visited, Yet when we visited our house parents for advice, the house father laughed and told us stories, saying, "When I was young," as we sat at his feet. Each night, tales filled the hallways about classes and amorous dates. A spell was cast. Each day as I walked to campus, I visited the periodical room of the university library between classes, where local papers filled towering rows of shelves, reminding me of friends and girlfriends who came from small towns. You must remember where you came from. Late each afternoon when I returned, I passed a stone by the alcove in front bearing these Greek letters for visitors.
Oh, Mike, you kind of knocked out your audio there. It's
Oh,
there you
did
go.
I?
That's better. Yeah.
Should I repeat anything?
Yeah, go back to it was passed by the stone alcove.
Okay. I passed by the stone by the alcove in front, bearing the fraternity's Greek letters for visitors and alumni to see, now fathers with children and wives, somehow drawn back time and time to share relish stories of college years, always saying, "Those are the best days of my life."
Yeah, great. I love the way you took the form, the storied house, and then included all the idioms throughout as like ways to guide the story from the storied house. Really fun technique, Mike.
Thanks. I think that's me again being a cross between a poet and a short story writer.
Yeah.
And a feeling that's me there.
Yeah. Well, very cool. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Okay, thanks.
There's The Storied House by Mike Bales. Laura Berg is next in line. Hey, Laura.
Hello.
Hi, good to see you today.
So enjoyable. Let's see. Okay, so, well, the night is young.
It is. And it's funny how much these are appropriate for contextually within the show. So that's nice. The night is young. We've got another 10 people, I think, left on the open line. They're prompt lines. Yeah. Okay. The night is young.
Night is young. A polka bounces from her feet. She's surprised, mother of the bride, by her own laughter. A polka she doubted was still there, so long since she had danced one. Now she is night and she is young. Gone stiff back and knees as she hops, steps into pirouettes that lift her skyward, as if into a Chagall, all plum and azure, a shtetl winking below, and floating beside her a milk cow, a moon, a star. In the distance, her shining daughter, buoyed in white, sails toward the shore of Groom. She even spots her father in his embroidered Polish vest, festive as he would have been, mother in his arms, so lively in their polka, as each wedding's only once, and the night still young, and memory a lonely place, until we wreath it in jasmine, adorn it with loved ones.
Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful poem. I love where you went with that. And there's so many great lines and images. Thanks for sharing that, Laura. I love the personification of night as actually being young. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. That was Laura Berg with The Night is Young. And next we have Stephen Horrell. Hi, Steve.
Hi there. I think I've unmuted.
There you go. Yep, we're good. Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's been a great evening, and I'm somewhat intimidated by all these poems. And I'm really glad I didn't include my Raining Cats and Dogs version because it was not nearly as good.
Well, there's no reason. I'm sure these are great, and we're all friends too. So there's no need to be intimidated.
Four short ones that don't even make a page.
Okay.
So they're very short. Okay, so the first one is shoot from the hip or lip. Be careful when you shoot from the lip in an open carry state. The next one is up for grabs and knee jerk. He thought she was up for grabs. He got a knee-jerk reaction. Okay. The next one is called Black Sheep. And this is one that it's sort of a prose thing. And I thought, oh, this could be a haibun, but I don't trust my haikus. And you always read them first. Anyway, this is called Black Sheep. I studied hard at school. Sometimes I was bad, often cheeky. Siphoned water from a sink in the chemistry lab out the window into the typing class below. When caught for transgressions, gave phony names to the teachers I thought didn't know me. But Mr. Reacher with his yardstick always knew who. Cub Scout, Boy Scout, in school plays, rebel without a cause, cane mutiny, court-martial, never really stepped out of the stream. Though I was subpoenaed to testify at a grand jury regarding Slim on a sodomy charge. That went over well at home. How did I know what he was doing with my girlfriend's friend that strange night in Philly? Basically, though, I signed on the dotted line, dotted my I's and crossed my T's, never strayed too far until Vietnam. Only one in my high school class. Whisper jet to Montreal.
So I think that is a haibun. I think that whisper jet to Montreal kind of works. So yeah, I think so.
Okay, the very last one's a real short one too. Mm-hmm. It's called the whole 9 yards, or the whole vineyards. In Naramata, BC, heat dome plus polar freeze. Red Rooster shuttered their winery. Gone, the whole vineyards.
That's great. But I love that. Some humor, sort of one-liners surrounded by a serious poem that's touching. Thanks for sharing those, Steve.
Okay, thanks. It's been a really good evening.
Yeah, it definitely has. Yeah, thanks so much. That was Steve Harrell with 3 short poems and then a longer one too for the prompt. Thanks for sharing those, Steve. Next up is Monica Dobos, Mooney, as we're calling her now. Hey, Monica, good to see you.
Hi, everyone. I cannot change that. My son changed the name, and I don't know how to do it. I changed the title slightly, but I think it still works.
Okay.
All right. Creamy Toscano in one hand, coastal Shiraz in the other. I pace my room until the cows come home. Heads down, pails between waxed legs. They ease themselves in, each carrying little hay-covered Christmas bags between their ears. Augusta plops her 5-month pregnant others into the red chaise lounge, not before pulling her white satin dress over the shanks. Sabina heads straight to the water filter and laps it empty. I look over my cat eye glasses. Too much French fries at the mall, I presume? But she just belches. Scratches her dewlap. Apollonia props herself next to the green couch and sings The Barber of Seville to some invisible stars in the ceiling, more like water leaks, but why set her back on her heels? Tulia looks up how to drink without getting inebriated on my computer, and when I shoo her away claiming I, unlike others, never peek over the picket fence, she bawls so ugly I pull out the breathalyzer and she charges for the backyard. When I ask the girls where midnight is, they moo and shrug. I wonder if they left the bull at the mall yet again, but their eyes blink large and innocent. Outside, the night smells munificent. Homes, water, urine. I take a deep breath in, and there they are, in the rosemary bushes. Midnight and Jasmine, licking each other's ears, although who can tell where the bull ends, where the cat begins? I usher Midnight in and summon all the bovines into a circle for the nightly prayer under the moody self-switch bulb. Oh, Father up above in the hallway ceiling, give us our daily hay, milk, bread, and wine. Bread, organic, sulfite-free, preferably.
That's great. I love that so much. There's, I think it was called Creamy Toscano in one hand and coastal Syrah in the other. I pace my room until the cows come home. That's just wonderful. I love. Do you work with cows or have cows? What is the cow connection?
I just have a
love...
cow obsession. Yeah, I just love them. I think, they're pretty spiritual animals, and I'm just fascinated with cows.
Well, that's wonderful. Definitely, I love that. Thanks so much for sharing that. Really fun poem again. Thanks for sharing it,
Thank
Monica.
you.
Yeah, that was Monica Dobos with another great cow poem. Let's go next to. Let's do we have a first-time caller, I believe, here in Kilmany M. So let's go to Kilmany next. Just to unmute, make sure. Hey, Kilmany, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Hi.
Yeah, have you been on before or not? Sometimes it's
no,
rarely.
I have never been on.
Okay, great to have you on. Where are you calling from?
I'm actually not that far from Naramata in British Columbia.
Ah, very nice.
Which was mentioned in an earlier poem. Yeah.
And is it Maney?
All right.
Is it Maney?
Yeah.
Okay. So the poem's by Maney, I should say.
Yeah.
And so what did you do for the prompt?
This morning I just decided to just follow the idiom and see what happens.
Ah, very fun. Okay, well let's hear it.
So I did, yeah. So. All right. It never rains, but it pours. What pours? Fish, frogs who squeak, sucking the moisture out of the earth, toasted hay, mystified or delighted worms. Sheep blackening soot, golf balls, volcanoes vomiting forth new and always fragile Edens, blood, falling upon the garments of many men who were so stained they stripped themselves of their own clothing in horror. Simple, not so simple, microalgae. Clouds of sand evaporating through other planets, comets, salt and snakes, spiders pouring around the cracks of our homes, where water pours clear the toilet bowl, and money pours down the drain. Dust and salt and ash pours fertility through rivers glorious end into the ocean. Our ocean, alien womb, which we try to chart, bouncing sonics off its mysteries, stealing from its forests and beds, reaching into sublime, clumsily, uninvited and unappeasing, our rudeness surely inviting destruction to pour, but never raining.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, thanks. I love how you just ran with it like the prompt said. And, it's Effable by Maney. Thanks so much for sharing that, Maney. Yeah, that was Maney with Effable. And hope you come back soon, too. Now we'll go back to the regular line. And let's go to Nate Jacob next.
Howdy.
Hey, Nate. Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you. Great show tonight. There's a few things I would improve on, but really I'm just leading into my poem. Don't take it.
All right. So what have you got for us?
So, I went ahead and wrote a poem in Spanish.
Oh, interesting.
Translated it myself because I lived in Chile for a few years when I was younger. And until I reached fluency, people would speak to me like a child or an idiot. But once I reached fluency, they could use these idioms. And forever after that, I was always saying, but what do you mean when you say that? So they would always be saying, oh, that guy's just looking for hairs in the soup. He's looking for something to complain about.
That's a good one. I like that. Yeah.
So that's what I wrote about. In Spanish, it's buscando pelos en la sopa. Since before I can remember and forever on, I've wasted my life in search of the perfect meal. Whether made by gods or demons matters nothing. My only measure, that I be left with the urge either to get it on, or to paint, or to write better poetry, or maybe even that it take me up several notches in thought and speech. Maybe I can finally fit in among the movers and the shakers and thinkers. The sad part here is that my true nature, my real self, never even gets to the main dishes of these hopeful meals. And depending on the order of the plates, I may not even eat salad, cutting meals short at the first sign of supposed imperfection. I am forever looking for hairs in the soups, and even if I find none, I find it doesn't matter. I much prefer a hamburger anyways.
That's a great last line. Love that. And yeah, excellent. And ironically, I am having soup for dinner, Nate. So hopefully your hairs will not appear in my soup, or else I'm going to have to send it back.
I had a hamburger for lunch, so it's all.
I have to chime in and say I'm having a hamburger for dinner.
There we
Yes.
go. We're all set, and you are. I know.
One last thing. Hey, Tim, I can't help but notice that Katie's shelves are empty, and you were complaining about having too many books in your garage. Maybe we could work out a deal.
The problem is, being 2,000 miles apart.
Hey, I have two. I'm looking at right over in the corner. There are 2 bags of books that he brought with him that I've yet to fill the shelves with.
All right.
The kids' rooms come first, obviously.
Yeah, only so many fit in the suitcase, but we'll keep, shuffling a few books over there at a time, and
they will be overstuffed in no time.
That's
it looks clean for now.
Yeah, enjoy this.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, Nate. That was great. All right, there's Nate Jacobs with Buscando Pelos en la Sopa, which was great. Okay. I didn't know he was bilingual. That's really cool, Nate. Next, let's go to Marty Smith. Hey, Marty.
Hello there.
Hey, great to see you. I think it's the first time you've been on, too, right?
Well, yeah, I was on, I think, in October once, but...
Oh, okay. Well, where are you calling from?
Toronto, yeah.
We have a lot of Canadians. It's really great. I love Canada.
So anyway, yes, this would be my first time participating in the way you've got it set up with the prompts.
Okay. Well, I see you've got a cats and dogs one. That's good. I'm looking forward to that.
Well, yeah, that's the 3rd time tonight, right?
Well, it's a good one. I think it spins off in a lot of ways. Let's hear yours.
It's certainly not raining cats and dogs. Just a sprinkle, actually, just now as I exited the building. Still, I chuckle at the thought in my mind and the memory of it in childhood, cats and dogs. What a thought. I picture cats and dogs, but raindrops, big as cats and dogs. And really, it is understood. It's a downpour so hard, maybe even cats and dogs will seek shelter. The fondest memory of it is a cartoon I saw in the daily paper one day in Cleveland, when I read the funny page each day. That cartoon was a woman sitting on the park bench, holding an umbrella with great cats falling from the sky around her, and the caption simply said, "I never saw it rain just cats before." And that is where I went just now, to that cartoon in the morning news.
Oh, that's funny. I love that line and a great memory. Thanks for sharing that, Marty.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Marty Smith with It's Certainly Not Raining Cats and Dogs. Excellent use of the prompt. Thanks, Marty. And next, let's go to Clayton Clark.
Hi there.
Yeah, good to see you.
I'm not going to say how are you.
That's okay. You're free to say it. There's nothing wrong. And I would ask how you are too. We're all polite around here. But I love the background. Have you been in the pink room before? That's really cool.
Yeah, I do. There's a lot of boys in my house, so it's fine.
Well, it's really the contrast of pink with books is really nice. Something to note, the white on pink with all the paper. It's great.
All right. Well, this might be a first thought, worst thought poem, but we'll see what happens.
Okay. I'm looking forward to that.
If you invite a bear to dance, the lady in her blue bikini told her friend, who looked like brie cheese packaged in a black one piece, that this guy she met online was always trying to get her goat. The black one piece said, "Sheesh, you mean he wants to pull the wool over your eyes?" "No, the goat. It's my goat he's always after. But you don't have a goat." "That's just it." "Well, I say don't take any wooden nickels from him." "Say, what is it you're trying to do to me? I confided something serious to you that I'm not sure what to do about, because I really like this guy. And the world's getting harder to live in alone. Does he know how to milk a goat?" "I don't know. Why?" "I suggest you get a goat, give it to him, Show him how generous you are, and he'll no longer need to steal the one you don't have. You're a genius. The sand began to burn their feet, so they ran to swim with the sharks.
Oh, that's great. I love how unexpected every turn in that poem is. Really fun, Clayton. Thanks for sharing it.
Thank you. It was a great night.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Clayton Clark with If You Invite a Bear to Dance, which that's one I've never heard before. And I assume it is an idiom. That's interesting. Let's go next to Mark Grenier.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Mark. Yeah, good to see you.
Okay, I'm using a stitch in time.
Ah, the stitch.
A stitch in time. Repairing that gaping rip in those old blue jeans of mine. I wish it was only 9 times I'd have to push that needle through to the other side of the faded denim I've worn for years. These jeans are a remnant of better times, when thrifty practice was less important than it is now. When carefree days of sun and shade brought singing birds and burbling streams, full of fish and happy dreams. Dreams from old Poor Richard's time, the legacy of thrifty days and victories for our side. Moral clarity looking out on an ambiguous world, where what we think we know is less obscure than what time has taught us is true. As blue as clear spring sky, or old blue jeans worn soft and faded by days of work or play, where saving 9 may represent the sign of too much care, of too much fear of what may come in the best of times to aging bones, becoming frail, faltering on the edge of decrepitude, where old age looms as poor and wan as another itch from another land and a screed against days dying in invaded homes destroyed by crimes and fraudulent wars, that shrivel lives escaping from some great wide rent in the social fabric, that sunders each from all of us alone and stripped of the too-worn fabric of faith and love, of caring for ourselves and others, straining to pull blue thread on through to the other side, stitching up these damaged times, lives worn thin, too threadbare now to bear the thrust of living alone and abandoned here, in the fate we've cast to the winds again. Facing fearful doubts that we can win a future fair enough for us and for our kin, in well-worn jeans and faded tees from years gone by, doubts surviving into quiet times, where sewing things up on a shady porch or out in the world seems worth the work, and might even be thought virtuous and work well done again.
That's great. I love the relentlessness of that. I think it's all one sentence, right? The whole poem. Yeah,
I don't know whether...
I think it is. It rolls. I mean,
it could be.
Sentences.
I don't know.
2 sentences. Yeah, stitching time. Just keeps stitching itself through and through. Yeah, great poem. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
And Mark Grenier with a stitching time. Next, let's go to Julian Matthews. A couple people left. 1, 2, 3. Looks like we have. Hey, Julian. Are you there?
Hi.
Hey, great to see you.
Yeah. So my 9-year-old niece is insistent I read this poem because it has the idiom "kick the bucket" in it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So here we go. The poem is called "One Important Thing." Have you got it?
Yep, I have it right there. Yeah.
One important thing for animals is for their survival. So they migrate the world to get the things that are essential. We humans like their fortune tellers. We predict their futures. We say that they kick the bucket or say that they will mature. The very first things that came to Earth died because of space. But now, in the current time, we say if they continue their race.
That's excellent. That's by Eva Mary Beth, a 9-year-old niece. One important thing. Yeah.
She wants to make an appearance now.
Oh, that's great.
Well, come on. Still waiting.
A little shy. Yeah.
Give her a sec. She's very shy.
Yeah. Well, that's understandable. Yeah.
And there she is.
Well, that is an excellent
Say
poem.
hi
Thanks
to
so much for
everybody.
sharing that, Eva. Did she send that to the Young Poets Anthology too?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay. Well, excellent. Well, thanks for sharing that, Eva. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Yeah. So that was Eva Mary Beth with One Important Thing, Kicking the Bucket. A wonderful, fun poem. Thanks for sharing that, Eva. And Julian, too, for facilitating. Let's go to Bishwajit Mishra next.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Bishwajit. Yeah, great to see you.
Good to see you, too. I submitted it.
Mm-hmm.
And before I start, obviously everybody talked about was a wonderful interview. I mean, the casualness of the poet.
Yeah, he does make it seem easy. He says, I just sit around.
He just drops this, this profound statement. He just drops them like he doesn't care.
It really is. He makes it all seem so easy, doesn't he?
Yeah, even the last week we had Bob Hickok, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was different, but he was also like...
Yeah, they're of the same school. I didn't realize when I booked them that they would have that much in common, but but they do have the same style. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have this called Ruddy Nose.
Uh-huh.
And I start with
nose. That's great.
This is an idiom, it's a mishmash. Like I have used some Indian sayings and some English sayings and some quotations from poets like that. So, and they're on double inverted commas, the ones they're verbatim. So those are the ones which are either idioms or quotes. You can say.
No, very fine. It's a
Ruddy
fun to
Nose.
listen to. Yeah, go ahead.
A village girl is snotty-nosed, your own village. And with that, I sure can get into a lot of trouble. What about a village guy? Well, what's the point of the old Oriya saying? Does it mean covet thy neighbor's wife? Now that makes it worse. Like I'm going against the stream of advice that Will Rogers offered. Always drink upstream from your herd. And I'm doing exactly opposite. I mean, I'm going to drink shitty water and I'll be given a piñata treatment and maybe made to rub the nose on the ground, because how best neutrally can I state that I don't think anyone would mind the neighbor part, at least not as bad as the gender part. I get it too. That saying has outlived its life. But how to get the context into another non-judgmental, apolitical, secular saying that can drive the point straight home? Like, folks, don't undervalue your own. Don't look down upon what you already have. But the challenge is worth the risk. And in any case, you can't always be averse to risk, at least a little. And in any case, anything that can go wrong will go wrong.
That's really wonderful. I love learning those expressions and the sort of the tension between the two cultures expressing things through idioms. That's really fun. Thanks for sharing that, Bishwajit.
Thank you. Have a good night, Tim.
Yep, take care. Yeah, it's Bishwajit Mishra with a ruddy nose. And I think we have one poet left on the Zoom. Paul Mitchell Bernstein is last but not least this night. Hey, Paul.
Hey, guys. Hope you're doing well. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you great.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to stay off camp tonight. So I decided to focus on the see where it goes. I went with allusions to idioms rather than direct idioms. And yeah, it was interesting. I mean, based on the sort of the automatic writing thing and then going back, and that was the Rattlecast was last week, and then you were talking about it in the beginning of the critique of the week yesterday, and that's why I was so interested in it, because yeah, I sort of ran with that aspect.
Yeah, that sounds a lot of fun. I love the different takes and the ways you can take a prompt. So it's gonna be fun to hear this version of it with the twisting.
So this is where it went, for better or for worse. the last but not least, but also probably this will be the darkest piece of the night.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so let me pull it up. So on the document, this is like 3.5 pages, but they're
huge font, yeah, so it's fine. Yeah,
they're 5 by 8, yeah, and they're big font, so it'll go pretty quick. And this poem should probably be titled Life's a Bitch.
Okay.
I wanted to give the reader some footing, something to hold on to at the beginning of the poem. In my castle over 4th Street, the Horse King. My kingdom for a Xanax, for divorce from everything. I'm so hungry I could eat a course of Zyprexa and Thorazine. That might be nice, to reel in these empty spaces that bloom, unfolding in clouds of mushroom octopus ink that muddy my thinking in waves of clutter, unoriginal clutter, and sinking sun-fucked sailors like me, a sea idle swamps, and fill them, the spaces, strung out and tattered to the edge of dreamlessness, the want of lovelessness and burning, tempo fading highways, rising then flagging down between valleys, between oceans, fragrant flanks of blossoming honeysuckle, lavender spear sweet sticks of blue rock candy. As I remember, I could kiss every one of them. So hungry, I can taste every inch of them, kiss them and kiss them again. Their petaled lips, white hot, smack heels hard on sidewalks, on high, moonless, dark, long avenues of envy and bright, under a cracked, slow sizzle of neon liquor and famished, desperate flight. From life, that bitch, a slog, born blind into her shame, into her madness and fray, into a drum hum so deep I cannot hear it, but feel it, rather rattling, guts like gunshots, turn stone to flutter, jump, drop, pressure, pop. What a goddamn mess I am. King of mournful mornings, prostrate at my throne, spent on knees, sweeping pleadings from under rugs, pulling sorries out of sacks before the sun gets low. That's when hammers, thunder cracks, when shades draw down shades, full sail ahead. I pace, I wander across laminates by light leaks and bathtub drains, dented. My brain bleeds incense and salt, and I swear, I mean it. I'm telling you, don't even think it. But it's too late. I drink it, and it's bitter, so bitter I shiver, try to shake it off, but break, sweat, stop and startle at every whisper, ignore the sirens I don't hear screaming, or maybe those are demons. Somewhere in slog, that bitch, that bog, I stand there, fish-eyed, staring out past the horizon, bending up around the bulging sky. I swim there in place like her, stupid, and still I can't hear it, still I don't see it. I have drifted too far, swung too hard, become nothing but a color-coded, push-pin derelict on some educated asshole's corkboard chart. I am ghost ship adrift on a room and ocean's vast and violent doom, whose spiraling dark depths lick like something slick, something leathery at my feet, something I cannot see, lurking in the 3rd-story keep of this old building on 4th Street. I tread water, I try to breathe, to keep my chin above her line, thinking this is not how I am going to die. And inside, I feel the distant discord of a highway faded, littered with neon flowers and the aimlessness of 1,000 sun-fucked sailors whose hearts pound louder, like ceremony and false light, like nonsense, like humdrum, and everyone hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That was Paul Mitchell-Bernstein with In My Castle Over 4th Street, The Horse King. Really fascinating poem, Paul. I love how you read always in the internal rhymes and you know, end rhymes too in there. Great poem.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, take care. Yeah, Paul Mitchell-Bernstein with My Castle Over 4th Street. And I believe that's going to wrap up. So let me see if there's any... yeah, let's do... let's do a quick poem. Yeah, this is not a prompt poem. Let me see. Okay. Yeah, that's going to wrap it up. I think the other ones that I have here are not poets I've seen today. So let's call it a night, and let's talk back to Katie Dozier. Hey, Katie, how are you again?
Good. I've been really enjoying the idioms. The only danger in doing this, I think, is that I start speaking in them unironically.
That's true. They do kind of. There's a lot that I didn't know too, which is interesting. Like, I mean, you think that they're cliches that everyone's heard, but a lot of them feel kind of fresh to me, which is something I didn't expect.
It's true. It's exciting to it's funny too, with Nivedita's poem being Come Rain or Shine. My poem actually, I think, ended up going to Come Rain or Shine. I almost tacked it onto the title, but then left it as a surprise. But it's funny how thinking in idioms makes you think of other idioms too.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Yeah. Once you start, you just can't stop. It kind of gets stuck in your head.
Isn't that an idiom also?
I think so, and it just keeps going and going.
Yeah.
But, anyway, so the prompt for this week, do you have it written down, or should I read it?
You should read it.
Okay, so next week's prompt is going to be right here. Move through. Oh, that was loud. Sorry, I don't know what happened. Move through an unnatural environment and describe it as though you were writing a nature poem. So if you look back at the one of the poems that Greg Kosmicki read, and I am I going to be able to find it? Which page number was it? It was what was it called? If you want to flip back to it, it was, I have opened the front door to let in the birds' songs. And that was the poem where he kind of did that a little bit. And I just thought it would be fun to do that some more. And so that's the prompt. And also it takes his walking use of poetry. So moving through an environment and describe it as though you're writing a nature poem, even though it's like an unnatural man-made type environment. I think that might be a fun thing to do. I don't know. What about you, Katie? Do you think that
I'm
might work?
excited. I mean, I think that they're thinking about my week ahead. There's a lot of potential to feel like I'm moving through.
Imagine the light stands at the airport is your flying
I
like
know.
trees, the
An
people,
IKEA
like
forest.
whatever. Yeah, exactly. The IKEA forest behind you.
We should also mention, I think, that this week on the Poetry Space, we're doing a really deep dive of looking at some poems, including one of Dick Westheimer's poems, which I think is going to be really interesting to look at and analyze on like a tiny scale of minutia, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, because last week on the Poetry Space, we finally had that. We had to postpone it a week, but we had the episode talking about criticism and reviews of poetry and how there's not enough. And then we thought we'd try to put it into practice during a show. So we're going to pick 4 poems. I asked on my social media for some suggestions. We had one from Dick since he was there. We have some others too, and it's going to be a lot of fun to dive deep for about 15 minutes each into some poems and sort of pick them apart. So we'll see how that goes. A little experiment for the Poetry Space this week. Yeah.
I think it'll be really fun. And Stephen Allen, who of course read his fun sonnet tonight on the prompt lines, joined us last week too to talk some about his, everything that he was talking about with illuminating things through writing reviews and things like that. So trying to bring some of that illumination mindset to the Poetry Space on Thursday will be fun. Yeah,
it definitely will. And to find that, you can find either Katie or I's Twitter or X handles, I guess. It's Katie_Dozier or Timothy Green on Twitter. And you don't need an account to listen, I believe, but you do need an account to participate. So if you'd like to participate and become a speaker there, it's like this, round table kind of discussion about stuff. So you can comment. We'll post the poems on Twitter and Facebook ahead of time too, on our personal things, so you can check that out. But I'm looking forward to that, Katie, and looking forward to seeing you in person again tomorrow.
Yay! After I write 8,000 poems on the plane.
8,000 poems on the plane. Yeah, you gotta beat me because I had 7 this time. So
that's easy to beat.
I know that is. All right. Well, just sit by the wing so there's less turbulence. That's my advice. Okay. Well, thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Katie Dozier, our prompt poems editor. Once again, the prompt for this week was to move through an unnatural environment and describe it as though you were writing a nature poem. So that should be a lot of fun. And now it's time for the Sciku. And this was the article that I was looking at this week, if it loads. Okay, it is. The article is right here. It's from Nagoya University. I have no idea where that is, but it's this university right here. And the article is shocking discovery. Electricity from eels may transfer genetic material to nearby animals. And so these researchers found, they were wondering, there's this way that you can sort of open up and sort of unwind DNA and let it like be looser with an electrical signal. So they wondered if an eel could actually do that to a fish when it bites it, and then add genetic material and sort of mix around its genes a little bit, as another way of adding new genes and having gene transfer in nature, which is a weird concept. I don't even know why they even thought of it, but they studied the eels and made them bite fish, and it actually happened and worked. And my first thought was, the anti-vaccine people are going to run with this one. And so, because that easy gene transfer is something that is in the news a little bit. So my haiku was, my haiku was this: eel DNA, even this topic charged. There's my haiku: eel DNA, even this topic charged. That is a haiku for this week. And that is the show for this week. Thanks, everybody, once again, for a really fun episode, for participating in the prompt lines. Greg Kosmicki was a great guest, so casual about everything, but really beautiful and wonderful poems, as Dick Westheimer pointed out, with those great metaphors, too. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed all the idiom poems, too. Now, next week's guest on the Rattlecast is going to be Gaitan Zgro. And Gaitan is a medical doctor at the University of Pittsburgh. And he doesn't have a book, but he uses poetry as part of his medical practice, as part of his particular teaching doctors on rounds. So he will do rounds and make them write poems, his med students, which is fascinating. He has a couple articles in medical journals about doing this and how much poetry adds to the experience of his medical practice. And so I thought it'd be really fascinating to talk to him about sort of the links between poetry and medicine. He's also a wonderful poet, was in the fall issue of Rattle. So that's going to be fun to talk to him. Gaitan Zgro, Rattlecast number 224, Monday, December 18th, the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And don't forget to bring your unnatural nature poems. And that'll be a lot of fun. We'll see you then. Hope you have a great week in the meantime, and I'll talk to you later. Good night.
You did great.